What are some signs you're getting older? Story 1. Rewatching certain movies regularly throughout your life, and the actors go from looking old to looking not so old to looking young. I remember Christmases where my old relatives would watch old films and ask which actors were still alive. The constant refrain was, "Is he dead? What about her? I'm sure she died this year." And now I do the same. Ben Stiller is this one for me recently. I watched Something About Mary. Initially, I watched it when I was like 20 years younger than him in the movie, but now I'm slightly older than him in the movie. He looks so freaking different in that movie to me now. Story 2. My parents are starting to look like seniors. I hate to be the one telling you this, but there will come a day when you are an adult when dealing with your parents. This will also be the day you'll truly understand the meaning of the saying, "You can't raise parents." This means you'll want them to change their ways in some way to make life easier for everyone, and they'll simply refuse or ignore your suggestions. It sucks. Yeah, I work in healthcare with a lot of geriatric patients, so this is glaringly true. We are all destined to regress back into toddlers or even babies if we live long enough to. It's also a billion times harder than that, so much to not look forward to, and too easy to let the present slip by as well. On the same note, it's important to realize how often you talk to or see your parents as you age. You see them every day growing up and then you suddenly don't. Think about how many times per year you see them. Do you visit them at Christmas and 4th of July? Are they 70 years old? Well, at twice a year times the average lifespan, you'll see them 16 more times in your life. Consider that. Of course, this is relationship dependent. My 80-something grandma moved in with my parents a year ago. When my mom or my grandma, her mom, speaks in another room, I sometimes struggle to figure out who's speaking. It gets really difficult when my aunt is over there as well. This past TG, my brother admitted he could not tell who was talking to us unless we were looking at them. It was extremely unsettling to hear grandma's voice from all three women. If I was in the room, I was fine, but the echoes through the house distorted their voices enough that I had no idea who was calling me from the kitchen when I was in the living room. I'm 40, and for the last few years, I've been so insanely grateful to have parents who were teenage parents. They were amazing despite how young they were, and now even though I'm freaking 40, I feel like my parents are still young. My dad is in better shape than I am, and still works and picks up overtime, and still does projects on the weekends. I'm so grateful and thankful for this. Story 3. Doctors are younger than me. My OBGYN is 30. We were discussing jam bands. I commented that I had seen The Dead a ton in the 90s, and he was agog. The 90s. Wow, that must have been wild. Yeah, imagine the folks that saw them in the 60s. My husband and I were just talking about this. I mentioned, I wonder whatever happened to doctors so-and-so, and then Googled them and found their obituaries. Ugh, at least they made it to their 80s and 90s, and I teared up reading some of them. Just nice hometown docs, retired before our part of the state was taken over by corporate med. Our current PCP is in her 30s, a good listener and really knowledgeable with a good bedside manner, which helps me feel better about her age. One of the undeniable markers of getting older is noticing that authority figures, such as doctors, are younger than you. It can be a jarring experience, especially when you've grown up associating medical professionals with a certain level of seniority and wisdom. This shift often forces us to reflect on the passage of time and how our perspectives about roles and expertise evolve as we age. Your observation about your PCP's youthful demeanor is relatable. Aging has a way of making the world feel simultaneously more familiar and foreign. Story 4. I'm the one saying, I remember when you were a baby. I was just talking about this with a niece. I remember rocking her to sleep and holding her in my arms. She was so tiny. Now she's as tall as me and doesn't have time for her old auntie. My niece turns 13 in January. I remember when she was a baby and she was my best bud as a toddler. She'd come over to my place for sleepovers and Sundays. Then her parents moved an hour away. When COVID hit, I had a baby. I feel like she turned from a funny kid into a moody teen overnight. Now she's in puberty and more interested in friends and makeup than hanging with her old aunt. Story 5. 10 p.m. is not a let's go out time anymore. I used to stay up until midnight as if it were nothing. I met my wife and we are now, mostly, a pair of old ladies that go to bed no later than 10 p.m. 10:30 if we're feeling really rebellious. I'm not even 40 yet, and she's not even 30. Freaking getting old, man. In college, I remember there was a typical rotation of bars everyone did. Started at 9 to 10 p.m. and was out all night. By senior year, we just went out to the last bar, which meant we went out at 12 to 1 a.m. The bars stay open until 3 a.m. Fast forward 15 years, I'm watching Wheel and Jeopardy in bed by 11 on a Friday. My friend, 36 female, invited me, 30 female, to watch the Rocky Horror Picture Show with all the dressing up and interactive theatrics, yada yada. It started at 11 p.m. Me and another friend were like, hell nah, and she tried to argue that we'd get dinner at 9 p.m. and then see the show. Another hell no. She also tried to say it was just one night a year, but we honestly just couldn't. My sister-in-law was 22 and stayed with us for a few weeks because we lived in Hawaii. There's a 12-year gap between her and my wife. She would start the night at 9 p.m. by taking 2 pre-game shots and then hitting the Honolulu nightlife. I ended my evening with a nightcap and was in bed by 8:30. Multiple times I woke up and was doing some morning chores when she was walking back through the door. Story 6. Started preferring quiet nights at home over loud outings. Give it time. I went off the rails as a teen, so by the time I got to my early 20s, I was pretty done with that scene. Had a couple long-term relationships, and here I am at 31 with that itch again. It's still fun to go to the bars or go dancing, but now it's a special thing, like New Year's Eve or Halloween, etc., rather than it just being a random Friday night. Don't pigeonhole yourself at 21. Story 7. Your friend group starts changing. First, it's weddings, then it's housewarming parties, then it's realizing you haven't hung out in 6 months because they moved across town. People move away, following careers, family, or otherwise. For me, it started a couple of years after college, around 25 years old. Take a serious look at your friendships. Treat them like the relationships they are. Put in the effort for the ones that you want to really keep. This one stings a little. The best man at my wedding ended up married to an absolutely awful woman. He basically isolated himself from everyone, despite constant attempts from myself and others to see him. And when he finally left her 7 years later, he came out of it a completely different person. There is also another difficulty when you're in a different phase of life than your friends. For example, started having kids 3 to 5+ years earlier than everyone else. You'll rarely, if never, get invited to events with kids. They'll think your kids are too old to get along with theirs. Being a single guy is like that as well. You don't get invited to family events because they think you don't want to be there, and at least for me, they were right. I don't want to spend my Saturday afternoon at a kids' party where I don't actually get to spend any time with my friend. However, this is one of those times where if you want the relationship, you might put in the work. You have to adjust your mindset. It's not just your friend anymore, it's the whole family. And eventually, after the kids get older, you can start to get your friend time back. The erosion and fading of friendships are so real. It's also really worth putting energy into keeping it from happening. My partner and I have had a small friend potluck about twice a month for 2 years now. It's become the regular time and space for our friend group to hang out. We are all in our 40s and 50s. We've got jobs and hardships, some have kids. Not everybody comes every time, but even seeing folks once or twice a month keeps away the loneliness and makes it feel like a real community. We catch up, make jokes, and eat food. It feels really good, and I couldn't recommend it more. Honestly, I have an entirely new friend group now. Most of my friends either moved away or got married or both. I still try to keep in touch, but that's been pretty difficult. It's much easier to maintain the new friendships because they were already married and settled into life when I met them, so nothing has changed for any of us. I wouldn't say I've lost my old friends. We've just moved to new stages in our lives. My old friends were, and still are, awesome. My new friends are awesome too. Don't let yourself fall into the I have no friends trap because you've grown distant from people who you were once close to. You can still make new friends at any point in your life. You just need to look for people with similar interests. Story 8. I'm 40 in a couple of days, and I just said out loud to another human being, I don't like driving at night anymore. My vision feels fuzzy, even though it's not actually fuzzy. I'm 41. I recently went to the eye doctor and my vision was 20/20. I thought that meant that it was perfect and I could just come back next year. Nope, the doctor told me that 20/20 didn't mean what I thought it meant. She said at around 40, your eyes get tired easily and having prescription glasses for reading and driving is a good idea. So yeah. You might be amused to know that the good old eye doctor put the fear of mortality in me at the ripe age of 24. She started telling me about how our eyes change and get drier as we women get older and hormones shift. I haven't even complained about dry eyes. I have had severe myopia since childhood, and I asked her about changing from gas-permeable contacts to soft lenses. I was afraid to switch because I loved how crisp my vision was with gas perms. I also never got mistaken for older then or now. It was a pretty bizarre interaction, and not just a throwaway comment either. She kept going. I switched to soft contacts a few years later, still miss the crispness of gas perms, but I do not miss the agony of getting a piece of dust in my eye. Mine was, I think my headlights are going dim on the car. Cut to replacing a whole bunch of electrical components, not just the bulbs, but the alternator, battery, main fuse box, and more. Trying to source the dimming problem. It wasn't until I was driving a friend's car, a newer one than mine, that it was no different. $3,200, and I realized it was just my night vision going. I'm 41 and I absolutely hate driving at night. My astigmatism seems to have gotten worse recently. I get annoyed with super bright headlights in my rearview mirror, which always seems to be every other truck. And I noticed recently that the streets in my city aren't very well lit, and the dividing lines are not reflective. Add to that the insane carelessness of other drivers, and I am not having a good time. Brought my daughter to a work event with me tonight and avoided 90% of the highway to get there because it was also raining and I don't trust other drivers. Took roughly the same amount of time anyway, but I'm not risking it. Story 9. I don't care as much what other people think of me, and I'm not as much of a people pleaser. Oh, so much this. It's like I hit 40 and suddenly give zero crap about what others think of me and have fully realized no is a complete sentence. No need for people to please or provide explanations. If I don't want to do something, and it's not something I actually have to do or am responsible for, I just don't. Mom and sister's family want to go to church on Christmas Eve? Enjoy, I'll be here watching Christmas movies with my family, since we don't go to church. Realizing that almost the entirety of my forever friend group, and of almost any such group, will true colors on you the moment things get hard or uncomfortable. I was a silly goofball. They didn't want to contemplate that I had real feelings in a real life. Now I'm a recovering, less bitter, sarcastic, middle-aged fart. A reciprocal relationship is not friendship. Friendship is going above and beyond, and that goes both ways. Remember who does and who doesn't. Don't bother holding it against them, it's a waste of time. As much as people say nobody will remember what you did in 20 years or even the next week, that goes double for people remembering what they did. So there's no point holding something against them, any more than there's a point in holding it against a cat. They've already forgotten it. Story 10. I threw out my shoulder brushing my teeth a few weeks ago. I popped a disc out of place when I was trying on a pair of shorts at the Goodwill. I got stuck bent over in my underwear for like 45 minutes in the dressing room before I managed to wiggle my own shorts back on and got my mother-in-law to take me to the emergency room. It took forever because I couldn't walk, just sort of shuffle half an inch at a time. A lot of the time when someone throws out something while they're doing a really small task, they didn't actually do the damage in that moment. They did it yesterday when they lifted that heavy box, or last week when they moved the couch, or every day for the last 5 years never stretching at all. The damage is done by something else and puts your body in a fragile state, a house of cards just waiting for a breeze to collapse it. Then you do some random little thing like picking up a pencil or brushing your teeth, and that's the breeze that knocks your cards over. Story 11. Drinking hits harder. My neck randomly hurts. I am constantly annoyed by the new slang used by the youth. Calling younger people the youth. Someone called me ma'am. Gray hairs appear overnight. Turn it around on them and start using it correctly. I'm approaching 40 and I work with guys half my age. They use no cap, that's fire, bussin' lit. I started using it with heavy sarcasm. We all get a good laugh and they have been using the slang much less often, at least around me. My brother has 2 kids in college and 2 kids in high school. Like most kids their age, they tend to shorten as many words as they can down to 1 syllable, which I find annoying. Lately, I've been trying to make everything I say around them longer than necessary just to annoy them. I'll say, "Can someone hand me my cellular telephone off that table? I need to punch this address into my global positioning system and see how far away it is." They absolutely hate it. Interestingly, I am finding myself increasingly annoyed by millennial slang too. Sorry, no, it's not the crap. It's fantastic. In my opinion, it's a bit of a virtue to try and learn to use millions of English words to better communicate our thoughts in precise manners. I've also been trying, and often failing, to work my way out of my daily speech as well. I'm not religious or anything, it just seems too easy, too crude. I like the challenge of thinking of more precise ways to express myself. Story 12. You groan when you get up off of a chair or a sofa, and you groan when you have to walk upstairs. You probably groan when you have to reach into a high cabinet for something. No idea if this is true, but I once heard that when asked what her secret to beauty was, Sophia Loren replied by saying something along the lines of, "You know when old people make those groaning sounds when they stand up? Well, I just don't do that." Who knew it was so easy? Story 13. Not old equals fell over. Old equals had a fall. I was in a recovery facility just after my stroke, and I was the youngest person there by decades. On the door for people who are at risk of falling down, they had a picture of an autumn leaf as a signal to other medical professionals that the person inside was at risk of having a fall. Clearly, there was this decision to put up a signal for medical professionals that would masquerade as nice artwork that would also not offend the patient. I wonder how many of the patients were able to see through the thinly veiled attempt at non-offensive communication. Now that I think about it, this could have been to mitigate against people with some level of dementia or Alzheimer's, but I don't think this was that type of facility, but I didn't go around asking. The reason is largely that one's inner ear balance goes after 50 or so you're much more likely to fall over for no apparent reason. You balance by sight, inner ear balance, and muscle feeling. When you're sitting in a car, there's no muscle feeling, and your eyes will contradict your inner ear if you don't focus on the land outside the car, and you'll feel sick. When you're old, the inner ear doesn't work. If you tip a bit and misjudge a step, it won't rebalance you. You can try moving your limbs on the basis of what you see, but that can unbalance you further. I'm 61, by far the oldest in an evening class I take. The teacher started overrunning, so the janitor's tactic was to turn the lights off as we left. One squeal from this gray-haired person on the steps, and they thought better of it. Story 14. Just a number, but in better shape now than I've ever been. But I work at it. I work out every day. Same, I'm middle-aged and am fitter and more well-off with more free time, smarter, more confident, and all around better than I ever was in my 20s. I find that people who think that you automatically get fat and frumpy at XYZ age are living in ways that reinforce that mindset. Have a buddy who is late 30s but can bench 250 pretty easily, plays lacrosse on the weekends and just chills. I think a big key to that is staying away from drugs or alcohol and being consistent with workouts. Definitely requires consistency. You don't quit when you get old, you get old when you quit. I'm feeling this lately as work has taken me off my BMX. Going from daily to every other day to finally weekly, what I'm doing now, slowly falling off the wagon, and it's beginning to become noticeable in my riding. Lazier hops, shortness of breath comes faster, muscles hurt more the next day, etc. I'm going to start making a habit of doing some flat ground stuff a couple of times a week to stay fit. Story 15. Hearing some of the bands you enjoyed as a teenager being played in the grocery store like it's soft background music instead of the rager you once thought it was. I grew up on the beach, starting when I was in high school. There were free concerts every Friday, but the problem is they were all lame old people bands that my mom liked. I went back to visit about 10 years ago and found out that the concerts were still going on. However, the bands were awesome, such as Loverboy, Santana, and Cheap Trick. Then I realized. Story 16. The signs are all too blurry to read. I was at Sephora yesterday trying to buy eye cream, which might age me already, and there is no way in hell I was reading the ingredients on the little containers. The nice young lady who was helping me out even showed me where they were. I couldn't even find the concept of letters. I don't think even my reading glasses, which I left at home, would have helped. Just threw one in my basket and prayed for the best. I'm 41 years old. I thought I had a little time left before I walked around with reading glasses hanging from a chain around my neck. Story 17. General weakness. My shoulders and hips especially. I walk every day just to maintain what is left for as long as I can. Also, loneliness. Loneliness is interesting. For me, I just like being alone more than I like being with others. And I've done nothing to cultivate new friendships, so that's on me. I'll be retiring next year, and the main thing that put me in touch with others, work, will be gone. My wife is already retired. I say we should volunteer, but she doesn't want her precious free time disrupted by a schedule. This attitude kills the ability to expand friendships. If that's what you think will quell the loneliness, I'm beginning to think it may just be boredom, because the alternative is having to claw your way into actually being a nice person with new people. That may be hard if your personality is more introverted. I'm talking out of my behind, sorry. Story 18. You do reach a point where dying of natural causes becomes possible. There's also this line that trails behind us in the age of people we can reasonably be attracted to. It's natural for the line to move upward as we age, but the line above, of older people we can be reasonably attracted to, will probably stall out at some point. Probably around the point where a person starts to really hit old age. So eventually, as one approaches old age, those two lines converge and one day meet. Then you can't be attracted to anyone you would consider, and can't consider anyone you're attracted to. Also, there's a loss of relevance. I don't know why it is, but what Grandpa Simpson said is eerily true. I used to be with it, but then they changed what it was. Now what I'm with isn't it. And what's it seems weird and scary to me, and it'll happen to you too. I'm watching the idols of my youth lose their relevance too. People like the rock stars of old, or actors who people don't remember anymore. I found out the other day that wearing a long undershirt underneath a t-shirt is a 20-year-old fashion. You get really tired too. At one point you never stop being tired until you die. One assumes the tiredness stops then, one way or another. Story 19. The number of people on here less than 40 complaining about being old is funny. You either need an active lifestyle or you need an exercise regime. I have 4 hunting dogs to keep up with that I also compete with. 10 years ago at 55, I could walk 4 30-minute stakes in a weekend and felt fine on Monday. I still do it at 65, but I'm a little slower moving on Monday, mostly because of my knees and ankles. Good muscle mass doesn't compensate for bone and joint deterioration. I'm going to tell you right now, getting old ain't for pussies. Story 20. My wife and I went to a party. We bought guacamole. We left the party and forgot the bowl. My wife and I talked for the next 2 days about how we needed the bowl back, and when we finally coordinated with the other people and got our bowl back, we were extremely happy. This was me when I left my blue and white pie dish at my aunt's house after Thanksgiving. My mom had to bring it to me a few days later. The whole time my husband was on the side of, if you care that much about a pie plate, you probably should leave it at home so it doesn't get lost. I, on the other hand, felt that since it was a lovely pie plate, it should be used and shown off. It's the adult version of having a favorite toy that you want everyone to see but also don't want to lose. Just the other day, I needed a Tupperware container and we did not have any of the size I wanted. My wife said that we had given them away when sending leftover food home with guests, mostly football watching parties. I was genuinely irritated that none of our friends thought to give them back. After a while, I went to Walmart to buy more of them. Story 21. When the new person I was training at work told me she was born in 2002. I became good friends with a girl who started as an intern at my job. I helped her train and eventually she was hired full-time, which was how we ended up as friends. I knew she was younger than me, but it never really came up in conversation until one day I mentioned something about MacGyver and she had no idea who I was talking about. That was when I learned she was 10 years younger than me. I just thought everyone knew about MacGyver. I graduated college early and started working in an office at age 21. Everyone was constantly telling me how young I was and couldn't believe what year I was born. And then I blinked and a few years went by and I was working with people 3 to 4 years younger than me. Now I'm hiring people for my business 10 years younger than me. Like, when did that happen? I once told my lab techs, I showed my then 2-year-old the Bohemian Rhapsody video, and she asked, "Why are those ladies crying?" I thought it was a funny story. They had no idea what I was talking about. This was prior to both Suicide Squad and the Freddy movie having come out. I'd have at least thought they heard it from Wayne's World, but nope, one was not born yet, and one was a year old when that movie came out. Story 22. When you bring up events, actors, music, or shows that everyone knows about and discover that no one knows what you're talking about. We mock a girl at work who doesn't get our cultural references. How can you not have heard of XYZ? Haha, you're so young. But really, we're just crying inside that she's only 28. I can't speak for the girl you work with, but from my own experience, stuff like this gets old very quickly. I work at a library, and at 21, I'm the youngest person on staff by roughly 45 years. I'll get legitimately crapped on because I don't know who Rock Hudson, etc. is, but I dare not make a joke about how ridiculous it is that they can't wrap their minds around email in 2020. I'm sorry, I'm sure for all of you guys it's mostly all in good fun and you can all have a good laugh at each other's expenses with no hard feelings. I don't want to make any assumptions about how your group operates, but if it were me, I would find stuff like that to get stale after a while. Story 23. I have no idea what's happening in music right now, and I don't mean that in a back in my day kind of way. I mean that I literally have no idea what's happening. I used to be so plugged in. I knew all of the coolest bands and went to all the best shows. I was giving recommendations to people. I was making mixed CDs. It was my dream job to be a music supervisor for TV. Now I don't know anything else. I try, but it's overwhelming. I don't know either in a wider sense, like what genres have emerged in the last 5 to 10 years. I wonder sometimes, but I have no idea. I'm still an avid music listener though, and what I do like a lot lately is Spotify's release radar section, giving me new tracks from, sometimes very old bands or artists. And the tracks, surprisingly 30 plus years on, are sometimes awesome, so at least to a degree, exactly the same thing. Some years ago, I took pride in keeping on top of my home city's local music scene, which was broad and well populated. A little while ago, my sister and niece came to visit and wanted to go see some live music. I had to admit that I had lost touch with what was happening musically in my own town and was at a bit of a loss as to who we should go see. I said, sometimes I feel like I'm becoming such an old fogey. I don't know whether to crap or wind my watch. At which my niece stuck her head around the corner and demanded, "What do you mean, wind your watch?" This happens to everyone right around their mid to late 20s. One day there will be a song you go to look up only to find out it came out 2 years ago and you never noticed, and the band is already on its 3rd platinum album. Or a bunch of songs start to have a similar sound that you can't freaking stand. And then it's a whole trend, and the style you like is a faded memory. It's normal though, happens to everyone. Pop music is made by and aimed at pre-teens, and teens, and people in their early 20s. It's inevitable that you'll age out of it. Plus, think back on how you felt seeing people in their 30s or 40s or beyond showing up to concerts and clubs wearing your generation's styles and speaking current slang. It felt off somehow, like they were posers or losers. We called them burnouts back in the early 90s. Even though we used to swear we'd always be young at heart and in touch with the newest trends, it always felt wrong to see older people doing it. Circle of life, man. Story 24. Went back to my university town for a wedding. A group of friends went to the club we all used to go to and left in shock 5 minutes later because everyone there looked about 12 years old. Ended up going to the oldies pub instead. If it makes you feel better, I had the same experience when I moved to a university town in my late 20s to finish a degree. I ended up getting a student job at a restaurant where most of my coworkers were late teens or early 20s. One day I heard one of the 16-year-olds complaining that she'd been getting bored clubbing lately. I'm like, wait, what now? How are you even going to clubs? You're only 16. And she told me that thanks to her expert fake ID, she'd been clubbing since 14 and all of her friends. So what I'm saying is maybe they were actually 12. I had never been to a real club, just bars, and I literally looked up club attire. That was my first hint that I was a bit old. Got there and half of the club were 18-year-olds in basically underwear. I was 31 and my first thought was, crap, I could almost be their mom. Then I made friends with a group who made candy and they called me their candy mom. It wasn't mocking, just fun. Yep, back to bars I went after about a year of that. Clubs are marketing constructs designed to ensnare fashion victims. They're more of an indicator for the people outgrowing clubs that they're outgrowing the marketing manipulations of their childhood. Clubs were never fun, but kids who don't know how fun works tend to go there to try. Unless you were going to clubs where people had a reason besides it's popular to be there, jazz clubs, goth clubs, the place that has a regular metal night, etc., those places always had a better age spread, and it's not uncomfortable. Went to a Skinny Puppy show in like 2007 and it looked like some of the old school punks had literally brought their grandkids. It was a totally different vibe. The same building was a regular EDM club except for Sundays when it was goth or special events like the Fetish Ball. I had gone to the Fetish Ball once and it did have ages from 21 through 70, maybe older, but I wanted to go on a regular night. I also went to a couple of dubstep shows after I got used to being old around kids. What's a tiny, entirely harmless thing that grinds your gears? Lights on in unoccupied rooms. Dad? Do your homework. While using the YouTube Android app, as soon as I plug in earphones, media volume drops to 60% because listening to loud music might damage blah blah blah. When I press the volume up button, the ringtone volume increases. So I have to spend 3 more seconds of tapping to increase the media volume via the touchscreen. Android really needs to get its crap together. When it comes to volume adjustment, 99% of the time when I'm hitting the volume button, I'm trying to change the media volume, not the ringer. Look up Rocker Locker. It makes it so the volume buttons always adjust media volume, working so far for me. Prying eyes, trying to see what I'm doing on the computer. It's an epidemic in my office. Lots of people nearly breaking their necks to see me posting on Reddit. My mom is so bad about this. A lot of the time, I'll be on my phone looking at an email or replying to a text or something, both private for various reasons, and she'll just get right up next to me and try to see what I'm looking at and say, "What are you looking at?" "Nothing. I'm looking at nothing. I'm watching a GIF of a kitten pop out of a towel." "Ooh, who are you texting?" "No one. Am I not allowed to use a keyboard anymore?" When the internet isn't down, but it's slow enough that it takes a minute or two to load a page. A minute or two to load a single page? That internet is down, no ifs and or buts. This isn't 1995 on dial-up. No one has minutes to waste waiting for pages to load. Verifone chip card readers. Do not remove card. Do not remove card. Do not remove card. Do not remove card. Okay, you can remove the card now. Beep, 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 beep. Bad design in that the beeping sound sounds like the card is rejected. It should be a friendlier tone. "Card accepted! Remove the card now!" Plays a tone I suspect they play when a nuclear reactor is melting down. When people don't push their chairs in when they leave a table or desk. When people in a group walk slowly and block the entire hallway. Screw you. In a similar fashion, people in grocery stores with carts walking as slow as crap with their carts, blocking the entire aisle, oblivious to the fact that there might be someone behind them trying to get around them. I work at a grocery store and I'm trying to do my job and people just won't get out of the way. My mom does this and it drives me insane. If I go grocery shopping with her, I'm always moving the cart out of people's way. Even a single bubble on a screen protector. Turn on the shower, close the bathroom door, and let a little bit of steam form. Not full rainforest, you don't want to damage your phone. Just get some moisture in the air. Apply the screen protector in a steamy bathroom. Boom, no dust or bubbles. Have you verified that this works, or is this from some BuzzFeed article? When people mindlessly share things on Facebook without even checking to see if it's true. Amber Alerts for kids from 2013, made-up political facts, and health cures. Use your brain, people. I should probably just block my mother-in-law. I'd be much happier. I really wish Facebook would put a date on news posts. Like how they strip an image from the site? Strip the date too. I'm sure we can work it into the meta tags or something, guys, please. They can't do that because it would make too much sense. When getting ice and I drop an ice cube, I don't lose my crap or anything like that, but darkness briefly falls on my heart when a piece of ice hits the floor. No idea why. My cat lives for this. As soon as she hears the ice maker, she parks herself on the rug and waits for a suitable cube to hit the floor, so she can bat it around. Oh, and in her eyes, not all ice cubes are equal, and in fact, most are inferior. When people spit their chewing gum out in the drinking fountain or water cooler and leave it there in the basin. I see this crap all the time in school. You can't be bothered to walk an extra 4 feet to spit it in the trash? Or in the men's urinal? Hey asshole, some poor bastard now has to reach in there and pick it out. One of my professors will drink out of her water bottle. It's so tiny, but the way she does it makes it completely infuriating. Every other normal person on the planet will finish their sentence, take a sip, and continue. She, however, will be mid-word and shove the bottle into her own face, then make this surprised sound like she had no idea it was coming. Then she'll finish her word. Today we'll be learning about modular arithmetic when used in ciphers. Suppose you had a clock and you needed to see what time it would have been in 14 hours. This actually sounds hilarious. It's the attack of the ninja water bottle. I can't imagine her thoughts. Crap, not water again! When will this end? Dogs barking continuously. Makes my blood boil. I live in an apartment. The #1 pet peeve of mine now. The dog below us is very vocal when its owner isn't around, which sucks when working night shifts. I might end up deleting this, but a lot of small children in public places that I need to be. My job is at a train stop that has 2 schools and daycare nearby, ages 3 to 6, and exiting the train is a minefield at 8 a.m. that I am never ready for. They are like moving landmines. Their parents put small children in front of them like a repellent shield that you have to dodge. The parents also let these kids walk up the stairs and most of them suck at it. Need groceries? Everyone in this area has small children. It reminds me of Nickelodeon's Legends of the Hidden Temple. I love kids in small numbers. As a parent, what infuriates me are the 40-something parents with infant children who have figured it out. I was on the T and this woman kept saying, "Use your words, let's go," and basically blocked an entire train as her 2-year-old couldn't navigate or communicate properly, and we should all wait until little Susie gets it right. My kid. I direct, move, and control. I keep him out of harm's way and the way of the rest of the world. I especially hate it when I'm in line waiting to purchase something, and that's the moment the parents decide to teach their children about money and change. No, it's not. Your 2-year-old holding up the line because they have no clue what you're talking about isn't worth it. That's for something to do with them at home. It's not cute. The cashier doesn't think it's cute, and the line of people behind you doesn't think it's cute. When boiled eggs don't peel correctly and the skin stuff takes out entire chunks of the egg. If you steam rather than boil the eggs, the shell comes off easier. Bonus level, prick a hole in the large end of the egg and keep it upright. While steaming, the shell comes off like magic. I have an egg steamer, and you have to pick a hole in the large end of the egg and keep that side up. If you do the small end of the egg, a bunch of the albumin boils out of the top and makes a mess. They do peel super easy though. Also, older eggs peel better than fresh eggs. When your conversation partner stands 2 inches too close, just move back there 2 inches, buddy. Actually, make it 8, bro. They aren't close enough unless you can feel the hot air from their nostrils. I'm a waitress, so we say, "behind you," a lot. I like to sneak up behind people and very soft and breathily say, "I'm behind you," so they can feel my breath on their neck hairs. It's funny to me. In shows or movies, when someone gets married and they say, "I now pronounce you man and wife," the guy was already a man. It should be husband and wife. How do gay marriages work exactly? "I now pronounce you man and man." Thanks for noticing, dude. I went to a gay wedding in December, and the minister said, "I introduce to you woman's name and woman's name, married under the grace of God." It was a religious ceremony. I thought it was nice. People who have no idea what zipper merging is, and who guard their spot in line like a dragon guards its treasure. What is zipper merging? I've anyways heard it's referred to as dry humping. A smudge on the inside of my windshield. I only get 30 minutes to grab lunch when I'm working, and I work odd hours, so I look up places to eat on Yelp or Google. It says they're open, I go there, and they're closed. Seems like it's not a big deal, but now I don't have time to go anywhere else and I don't get to eat. How hard is it to put your accurate open hours online? On a similar note, just crappy restaurant website design in general. I don't need your whole history, your chef's life story, and pictures of the people having a good time. I want 3 things: location, hours, menu. They should be present and obvious. I don't understand restaurants that have a website but no menu. Why the heck would you even have a website if you're not going to tell people what you serve? It's not even hard, just photocopy the menu and upload a PDF. Not clearing microwave time. The idea of not wanting to wait 4 more seconds is pretty logical. Every single time I clear a microwave at home or work, I say, "and now it's o'clock again." My mom spent years seething over this every time my dad used the microwave, slamming the button when he was out of the room and violently bishing about it all the time. Never did she politely ask him to maybe clear it. She also hated that he pressed the buttons the wrong way and used the automatic 1-minute button. Years, violent, vicious reactions, hours of complaining. On top of a million other things she felt he did wrong, while she was abusing my dog regularly, complaining that my dad's chronic pain was a problem for her because it annoyed her when he screamed and stole his pain pills, keeping me from medical care. I have permanent nerve damage now, or having friends and eventually forbidding me to speak to my dad. In our house, I sometimes leave the seconds on my microwave in my home just to spite her. We don't use it as a clock. Kitchen cupboards left open. What's really fun is when you forget it's open and raise up, slamming the soft, tender center of your scalp right into the corner with full inertia of your rising body. It's just fantastic. People who send chains. No, I won't send this BS to 10 people. At most, you're getting blocked. Or those annoying, "let's see how my real friends are," copy and paste crap on Facebook. Your versus your. 2 versus 2. There versus there versus there. Lose versus loose. It's not that hard. Also, would've, should've, could've. I had a hard time just writing that and not deleting it. For those that don't know, it's would've, should've, could've. The VE is a contraction of the word have, kind of. People who stand just a bit too close while you're queuing. No, stop it. You're not gonna get there faster by breathing down my neck. Also, people who stand 10 feet back from the next person. Are you even in the line? Large discrepancies between dialogue volume and the music in TV shows. Movies are worse than TV shows in my experience, though it's usually explosions and other sound effects rather than music. And in the next scene, everyone is whispering. It's pretty much the reason I watch everything with subtitles on these days. People who use words at the end of acronyms that are part of the acronym, like ATM machine, pisses me off to no end. When your headphones get snagged and pulled out of your ears. Or when the pocket of my sweats catches on the drawer button in the kitchen. The sound of chewing or swallowing. I actually have to get up and leave the room if someone is eating chips and I can hear it. I get so frustrated to the point of sometimes crying, and only face to face too. I can watch TV shows and have no problem with the sounds, but come within earshot and I might fight you with my sound-fueled rage. LOL. I have it too, but not quite as bad as you. I cringe when I have to eat with others and there's no background noise to help buffer the sounds of masticating, swallowing, gulping, and slurping. And the worst, hearing a burp travel up someone's esophagus. Being woken up just before my alarm is due to go off, specifically if it's 5 minutes or less. I don't know why, but for some reason being robbed of those precious final 5 minutes makes me want to stab the person who dared to wake me. I do this nearly every day, but it makes me happy, as if I've outsmarted my alarm or something. There's a difference between waking and being woken. When people call Mario, Mario. Don't forget Pokemon's incredibly annoying Pokemon. Son, you playing with your Pokemon again? People chew with their mouths wide open. It sucks so much. It drives me insane. What I believe is that it is because of my autism, but it might be different for you. It's so awful. I can't even eat with my family. Can't go to the public where people are eating nearby. Sometimes I would have to put in headphones so I don't hear. It makes me grow crazy. People asking questions they could figure the answer out to if they just thought about it for 3 to 5 seconds, then denying that it was a stupid question. That's why I'm a fan of stupid questions get stupid answers. People that tell long-winded stories with an unnecessary amount of detail and explanation. It makes me feel anxious and really agitated. Just get to the point already. Okay, so a guy at work said something funny. Just tell me WTF was so funny instead of explaining to me where you know him, where the convo took place, and any other irrelevant crap. Parents bringing noisy children in the cinema. A couple I am friends with brought their baby to see Rogue One, but the second the kid got fussy, one of them got up and took him outside. I think if you're going to take your baby to the movies, that's the right way to do it. When people tag me and stuff on Facebook, just send me it via a message or something. I should probably just get off of Facebook in general. You can disable tagging somewhere in your privacy options. Alternatively, you can change it so that you're notified anytime anyone tags anything. That's also a good choice. Elevator etiquette. It is pretty common to respect the people that are already on the elevator and are getting off before rushing inside. My job often entails riding an elevator multiple times throughout my 12-hour shift. It's surprising how many people will stand right in front of the doors to get onto the elevator when it's pretty apparent people are trying to get off. It's gotten to the point where if I'm the only one on and I'm getting off, I will stand blocking the entrance in preparation that someone will try to get on before letting me off. The number of times people have walked into me because they weren't looking and just walk on is ridiculous and annoying. You just gave me another "so glad I don't live in an apartment anymore" moment. This lady would stand smack dab in the middle of the elevator doors opening, then push her way in no matter how many bags I was carrying or what strollers were in there or what. She just had to get on ASAP. I'd finally had it, and when she tried to do it just before I moved, I held my arms out, blocked her attempt, and said, "You've been rude long enough. It's my turn to get out before you get on. Wait your damn turn." One of the most gratifying moments of my petty life. Babies screaming, crying, or just making sounds at the top of their lungs, especially when I'm trying to concentrate on something. It's honestly the worst sound in the world. Sometimes you have to put your kid in the room and let them wail on their own, or you'd end up punting them through the wall. I have 2 young kids and am pregnant, so my tolerance for their loudness has hit an all-time low. When the youngest throws a fit and is inconsolable, instead of holding her, I just put her in her room with a "Bye, Felicia." She's usually asleep within minutes, and it's sweet silence. When people say, "I could care less," that's the exact opposite of what you're trying to say. It's "I couldn't care less." Also, when people leave their shopping carts in the parking lot. Just now, when people don't put an asking price in their listing. I saw something I want quite a bit. The first bid was €15, but the item is worth considerably more. I don't want to rob myself of a good deal, but I don't know if the owner knows how much it's actually worth. So I get to decide between potentially overpaying and frustrating someone with a low bid. This. Listing with "just make me an offer." Drives me loopy. Give people something to go on. When people talk on speakerphone by themselves and you can hear everything. I work at a gas station and people will come to the counter, set their phones down, and continue the conversation at full volume while they're whispering what they want to me. The speakerphone is always cranked up as loud as possible too. Screw those people. I'm a barista, but this goes for customer service in general. Me. "Hi there, how are you today?" Customer. "Large coffee." Maybe I'm just jaded, but if I'm just a retail robot to you, you are just a customer robot to me. OMG, I hate this. I used to work at a Cajun food trailer in a yuppie part of town. "Hey, yeah, I'll have blah blah." They also rarely tipped. I once walked over to another trailer to get some lunch, and this woman in front of me paid for her food and reached for the tip jar with $1. When the girl in the window turned around, she quickly stuffed the money back into her purse. She turned around and I raised my eyebrows. She just gave me a scowl and walked away. I work around a lot of elderly people, and it's so frustrating when they don't wear their hearing aids or have their hearing checked regularly. It makes me sad for them and makes me impatient when I have to repeat myself or shout. This is not a rant against people who are born deaf or with hearing disabilities. This is a rant against old people who are stubborn. So one thing you can do to help that is pitch your voice lower. My neighbors were taking care of their Nana, who just turned 90, I think, and could not hear normally pitched conversation for crap. I was over at their place for Christmas dinner one year, and her whole family was just yelling at her when they wanted to include her in conversation. I just dropped my pitch a fair amount, and she could hear me at normal volume. Her family was astounded. I was her translator for the night. She was a joy to be around. One-uppers. I like to let people live their little fantasy, and usually it doesn't bother me. Sometimes though, I just like to talk about me for a change, damn it. I hate the Misery Olympics in particular. Do you one-up my 5 hours of sleep by only getting 4? Not something to be proud of. When my roommate leaves the cabinets open when putting something in or taking something out of them. After he puts his dishes away, nearly every cabinet is wide open. It makes me illogically angry. Like, you already did the difficult part. Why is it so hard to close a freaking cabinet? People stop at the bottom or top of an escalator trying to figure out where to go next. Keep walking or move off to the side. When you hand someone your phone to show them a picture and they start swiping through your gallery. This is exactly why nobody touches my phone. If I want someone to see something, I will send it to them. They can be 2 states away or 2 steps away. Signal lights. People, I cannot guess where you're going. It's not harmless because of the fact that so few people use them. I can't count on them at all. Even if someone is going straight, I can't be sure anymore because he might just turn recklessly. We need a going straight signal now. The people who have a packed trolley and go to the self-serve checkout but are really slow and stop every 5 seconds to check the item was the same price as they thought and to hold the item up to look for the barcode. You should have to pass a test to use self-checkout. It's not for everyone. Excessive ATM fees. What's even more bullcrap to me is that some ATMs have a closing time. Why? That makes absolutely no goddamn sense. I'd kill someone if this ever happens to me. I use ATMs when the bank is closed. I shouldn't have to worry about those closing either. People talking with their mouths full of food. Your thought is so important that you have to get it out right this instant even though you have just inserted half of your daily protein requirement into your face in one forkful. The opposite of this is true as well. When you have your mouth full of food and someone asks you a question, they keep staring at you while you're chewing, expecting you to answer right then and there. No, I'm not going to talk to you with all this food in my mouth. That's disgusting. Couldn't agree more. I just continue chewing and motion with my index finger that I'm not a caveman and will answer when I'm done chewing. When people come to a complete stop before making a turn, I don't get it. If there is no red stoplight, no stop sign, you don't need to stop. So many times the person in front of me stops completely. sits there for a few seconds, and then turns. It's not that hard to make a damn turn. So we go camping. We have 2 dogs and want to smoke pot, find a secluded campground on a river toward the evening, and drove to a site where there is no one around, a rarity in Colorado even in the 80s. We get set up, tent up, dogs happy and inspecting and pissing on everything, get the joint rolled, break out the tequila. Along comes a van. They drive past us and down to the end of the road. 15 minutes later, they're back. Stop at the site right next to ours, with their 3 kids and set up. Seriously? This was 28 years ago and I'm still baffled. They had the whole campground to choose from. I never understood why people do this. It irritates me. Like, go away please. Commercials and advertisements. You can't even watch a TV show on demand without them. They even show up in Instagram stories of all things. And don't get me started on YouTube. Adblock works wonders. Sadly, it doesn't exist for TVs. Fire alarm going off without burning anything while cooking. If you have a fire alarm in your kitchen, then turn it off before cooking and turn it back on when you're done. Even if a fire does happen when you're cooking, then the fire alarm isn't going to do much because you're already there. I remember my grandparents had to do this. When people camp out on the weight machines in the gym, you have no idea how hard it is for me to not walk up to them and grab their phone and stomp on it like a child because they have spent the last 10 minutes sitting and texting. The worst part is there are benches lining the gym where they could go and sit and text if that's all they want to do. I come to the gym to work out, not text, but whatever. I don't really gym, but can you call them out on it? Hi, are you still using that machine? That's what I do to the people who block doorways now. What's the worst example of bad parenting you've ever witnessed? At a movie theater, sitting in the 4th or 5th row with my friends. This was an R-rated movie. 2 kids, maybe 4 and 7 years old, are in the audience. They start playing and running back and forth at the front of the theater. The 4-year-old falls and starts to cry. The parent doesn't bother to get up. My friend finally went to console the child after a few minutes. The mother never bothered to get up. As a former theater worker, I can't tell you the rage I feel over this. As a frequent theater goer, I wholly understand. There were parents with their toddlers watching Deadpool. When did common sense become optional? An irate mother of a girl in a private school's music program made a big scene in front of the faculty and students because her daughter had not been selected to sing a solo in a school concert. The student had been very clear to the faculty that she didn't want the part, nor was her voice suited for it. Still, her overbearing mother insisted that she audition against her will. As a result, the girl was yanked out of the school she loved by her parents and embarrassed, all because the mother's ego required that her daughter be the shining star in front of others. I know someone who was raised this way by a single mother. The girl is now 35 and still acts like the world owes her something. It's a sad way to raise a child. The world owes you nothing. It was here first. Mark Twain. This was like a 5-year-old kid emptied a 4-pint bottle of milk all over the floor at the supermarket where I worked, and her mom just stood there and watched. To add to that, the child managed to place the empty bottle in the center of this now 2-meter wide puddle, and the mom just looked at me and said, "You got some cleaning up to do." Unbelievably rude. I would have handed her the mop and bucket, and made her pay for the milk. A little while ago, in a supermarket in London, a young girl was screaming at the cashier for asking for ID for the large bottle of alcohol she was buying. As the cashier continued to ask for ID, the girl opened her coat to reveal a large swollen belly and shouted, "Of course I'm old enough to drink alcohol, I'm pregnant." Holy hell, this is exactly like something you'd read in a joke book. I work at a movie theater. I remember once asking for ID for an R-rated movie about a girl who was about 16. You had to be 17 without a parent. She goes and gets her mother, who starts to lose it when I explain she has to accompany her daughter. She points at the girl's stomach and says she's going to be a mother. She can make her own choices about what movies to watch. I just stared at her. I was driving along my street when this 4 to 6-year-old kid rolls out of a driveway on a tricycle. I come to a stop and wait for him to get out of my way, as he seemed to be doing. His mother runs down the driveway and just starts screaming at me rather than get her kid out of the road. Another car comes up behind and without waiting just goes around, clipping the kid's tricycle and knocking him on the ground. And the lady just screams at me even more. She wouldn't stop or get out of the way. I finally just held my horn down till she gathered her kid up and got out of the way. Some people are really messed up when it comes to accepting responsibility. I was following a car through town one day and we were coming up on a green light. The property on the corner lot we were driving past had large stone fences, so you couldn't see cars coming in the cross street. Well, all of a sudden, when the car in front of me is like 20 feet from the intersection, a cyclist rides through his red light right out into the intersection. I'm thinking, this guy's screwed. But the car in front of me reacts instantly and slams in his brakes and manages to swerve around the back end of the cyclist's bike. After the commotion, we both make it through the green and get stopped at the next intersection. The cyclist sees this, changes course, and pedals fast to get up to the car in front of me. He starts punching the window of the car and spitting on it and kicks the door and then rides off. It was surreal. He made a huge mistake by running a red, and the only reason he wasn't seriously hurt was because of the good driving done by the guy I was following. So naturally, he proceeds to try and assault the guy that saved him months of recovery. In the waiting room at the doctor's, listen to a father and son converse for 30 minutes. They would ask each other questions about geography, history, and the universe in a natural, not interrogatory way. It was clear the father was remarkably knowledgeable and that he enjoyed conversing with his son. It soon became apparent that this was far from their first conversation of this type. The son had an above-average understanding of the world and a mature and sharp way of thinking. Listening to them was a serene experience. It put some things into perspective. There are more people like this around me, and no matter the bleak situation in my country or worldwide, it is possible to lead these beautiful, fulfilling lives. What? You wanted the worst example of bad parenting. Everyone else is posting some pretty good examples. God damn, I hope I can be this type of parent. When the time comes, I'd love to be the type of parent that my kids respect for moral and educational guidance. You can be. Children are people. People that want to be understood and want to understand. Always answer their questions. No question is dumb. Not necessarily the worst, but depressing in some ways. Overheard a woman tell her child in a condescending manner, "Don't be stupid, lizards don't lay eggs," whilst in the reptile house at London Zoo during a zookeeper talk. They set up a wedding fund instead of a college fund for their daughter, and told her that somewhat frequently. She ended up getting an MRS and had a $250K wedding before never working in her field. They essentially told her, "You're going to be a housewife and it's futile to develop yourself as a person," from the time that she was 4. The concept of MRS is so weird to me. I'm in the middle of my undergraduate, and with the amount my parents and I pay for tuition, textbooks, transport, plus all the time I spent studying, I can't imagine going only for the purpose of finding a man. My parents want me to get married. They want grandbabies, and are from a country where arranged marriage is the norm. But even they are saying, find a career first. When I was a cashier, this mom came in with her son's piggy bank. The kid was with her and must have only been about 6 years old. He wanted to buy a candy bar with his money, but the mom told him no, that his money was going to help support the family. She then proceeded to buy a 6-pack of drinks and some cigarettes with the money while the kid watched. The poor boy had tears in his eyes the whole time. I refused service to her, and the manager ended up ringing her up. She was paying with mostly pennies and nickels, and while she was distracted, I saw the boy walk over to the candy rack and wipe the tears from his eyes. I asked him what was wrong, and he told me it had taken him 3 years to save that money, but his mom didn't have a job, so she took it from him. I bought him the candy bar he wanted and gave him a bunch of quarters for the gumball toy machines. His mom saw him trying to get one of those sticky hands from the machine and then took all the quarters he had from him. I'm a teacher. The examples of bad parenting I could give are staggering. The worst examples end up with me calling Child Protective Services, like the 14-year-old who left school to play designated driver for a wasted parent, or any number of things. Day-to-day normal bad, though, is any parent who talks crap in front of their child. I don't care who you're bad-mouthing, don't do it in front of your child. All that comes to school, all of it. I worked as a cover supervisor in a school for a couple of years, and the crap I experienced was insane. I work with 13 to 19-year-olds, so they already had enough issues managing normal everyday teenage struggles, but the things some of the parents did to add to their burdens were disgusting. I ended up leaving to work with adult learners, mainly because my degree is in a subject not taught at the school level, but it was a relief in a way not having to watch these kids suffer. I still lose sleep worrying about some of them. Teachers are so underappreciated, and no one seems to consider what you see and have to deal with. Well done for being a protective influence for those kids. Average guy here. Thank you, and to every teacher, child services worker, and good parent reading this comment. You are all well and truly beyond underappreciated, and have to not only bear witness, but to deal with the consequences of issues in the community the rest of us prefer not to even think of as existing. So many times, despite having a very difficult school life and not really engaging so many times, I think about and regret not expressing my sincere gratitude and appreciation, not just for the way my teachers treated me, but for doing what they do. If you're still at that age where you have school teachers or know someone who does, please, 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 for the sake of society, do a very little thing to make a very big impact and go express, even with a simple card, your appreciation for your teachers. My sister was worried that her 7-year-old son wasn't at the level as the other kids and considered holding him back a year. She didn't end up going through with it, but my brother-in-law found this development super funny and kept openly mocking his own son until his own son started crying his eyes out and needing a hug. I was absolutely horrified that his own father was acting like a schoolyard bully. Not a parent in the case I saw, but a grandparent. I used to nanny 2 kids under 3. The boy was very shy and cautious just by nature, and it took time for him to get used to new things and people. His grandparents lived an hour away and would sometimes babysit, but of course, a 2-year-old doesn't really remember people they only see once every couple of months. One day, the grandparents came over to babysit and brought a new kiddie pool. The boy had played in a kiddie pool as a baby the previous summer, but of course, he doesn't remember that, he's 2. So the grandparents set up their gift, fill it with water, and I got the kids changed. I'd always stay an hour or so after the grandparents arrived to make sure the kids were comfortable with them first. Grandpa was so excited for the little boy to see the gift, but the little boy wasn't sure about it, because he's basically never seen a pool before. I started getting him used to it, put his sisters in, dipped my toes in, encouraged him to put his hand out and feel the water, etc. It was taking him time, but he was warming up. Well, Grandpa ran out of patience. He grabbed the kid and just plopped him into the pool. The little boy immediately started panicking and crying, and then Grandpa started mocking him for crying about a little water. I took the kiddo inside and told his parents what happened. Scaring the crap out of the shy toddler is pretty crappy, but mocking a baby for crying when he's scared? That crap is foul. I like you. If I would afford a nanny, I would hire you. I was in a department store and this couple was shopping with their 3 kids. The boy child, who looked to be about 8, picked up a hairbrush and smacked his sister, who started crying. The mom said, "Alex doesn't do that. That isn't nice." The boy replied, "Screw you." The mom, still ignoring her crying daughter, says, "Come on, Alex, don't say that." To which Alex then hits his mother with the hairbrush. The mom bends down and says, "Alex, that really isn't nice." Alex responds by slapping his mother across the face and saying, "Screw you." The mom simply says, "Alex, that wasn't necessary," and kept on shopping. The dad just watched all of this like it wasn't his problem and eventually just walked away. I'm 51% sure that if that was my son, I would either emancipate him or put him up for adoption. Some kind of legal separation. If a kid is that rotten that early, he's going to be in prison before his 18th birthday. Yeah, there's something else going on with little Alex. A couple of years ago, I was on a shuttle in Yosemite. A little girl approximately age 10 had this nasty tight cough. Being in the medical field, I was concerned and asked if she had asthma. The father answered in a curt and rather annoyed tone that she was fine. They were doing controlled burns in the park, which was causing my own asthma to act up. The girl was not fine as she was clearly struggling to breathe. I bit my tongue, but to this day, I wish I had somehow persuaded the father to get her help. When I was around that age, I had a night where I felt like I couldn't breathe enough. Just couldn't catch my breath. My mom had me stand outside and then had my dad drive me to a lake so I could catch my breath, I guess. He kept complaining to me that if I couldn't breathe, I should go to a hospital. I was like, I don't really have a choice in this, and I'm scared that I can't breathe. Had to go and get diagnosed with asthma on my adult own. Growing up and not being able to breathe sucked. All the adults explained it to me as being fat. A woman on the bus told her approximately 6-year-old son to tell an approximately 11-year-old schoolgirl to move out of the way, but referred to the girl as that fat cow. I lost my crap, probably displaying pretty bad parenting skills myself as I was taking my son to school, but I couldn't let it pass. I don't think that what you did was bad. I mean, losing your cool is not ideal, but you showed your son that you are willing to stand up for a total stranger when they are being mistreated. Not only that, but that girl was probably thankful someone had the balls to stand up for her. A mother let her kid play in the stream of wood chips coming out of a wood chipper and yelled at the guy who was cutting down trees because he told the kid to get away from it. She was on her phone the whole time. There could have been nails and stones in that wood that could have hit the kid, but nope. It was the bloke's fault for chipping wood and not letting the kid play in it. Not to mention the kid could catch a high-speed splinter in the eye. doubt I'll be the worst example in this thread, but while sat outside a noodle shop with a friend and my 3 dogs, a mom and dad went inside to order and left their 2 children to run around outside and come up and hit, slap, and poke and scream at my dogs. The children only giggled and ran off when I told them to leave us alone, and would then repeat the whole thing half a minute later. The parents' only reaction was to occasionally glance outside and smile as though it was something cute and their kids weren't terrorizing my previously napping dogs. Control your children. My nephew, who was an awful 4-year-old crap, kept poking and then running away from my 100-pound dog. Kept doing it after I told him to stop, and his grandmother lazily half-assed told him no. So finally, I stooped down and told him, if you keep teasing my dog, he's eventually going to chase you and knock you down. When he does, it's going to hurt. A lot. And when you're crying, I won't help you. He straightened up real quick. One of my friends, when she was a wee one, 3 or 4, she went to pull the cat's tail. Her mother and sister warned her, if you do that, you're going to get scratched and it'll be your own fault. Cue pulling tail, scratch, and I told you so. She never did it again. I once saw a mother buy a drink for her kid. The kid was roughly 2 to 3 years old and she bought him a drink because he likes it. The boy's name was Barney Gumble. My parents telling me I'm the source of all their problems and arguments until this day, only to see my parents do the same to my younger brother. Also name-calling, very mentally abusive. They feed their kid with only McDonald's fries. Literally just that, every meal of every day. This has been going on since the girl could eat solid food, and now she's 12. She doesn't eat anything, just McDonald's fries. Apparently, her body rejects other food items. It's so ridiculous. I am hoping it's not real, but it sure is. That sounds like fantasy. People need more than McDonald's fries to survive, especially for 12 years. I know, I wonder if she really eats anything else. But from what we know, all she eats is fries. But yeah, with such a poor diet, the kid is obviously malnourished. She would throw tantrums if she couldn't get her fries, so the parents would just give it to her. In a grocery store, and I see a probably 5-year-old walk across the apple display, taking a bite out of each apple on the bottom row, looking around and then placing the apple back with a bite out of view. I stood there with my jaw dropped, waiting for her parents to do something. Finally, the woman saw me, looked at the kid and said, "Mija, no!" and promptly turned around and continued to let her do it. I was in a store the other day and there was like an 8-year-old with his own cart. Parents are nowhere to be seen. You could hear this kid through the whole store just yelling constantly. Not words, just, "Ah!" I see him about 3 times while shopping. The first time he is laying in an aisle just yelling. The second time I see him in a different aisle, his cart is just parked across it, and there is a guy trying to get past, so he needs to move the cart. Third time I see him, he is riding a cart and crashes into an old lady. Keep in mind, this is all during constant yelling. It was crazy. I then kind of watched him for a bit, and I followed him around for a minute to see if I could find the people that owned him, so I could share an opinion. But he rode his cart past the checkouts, and I decided, screw it, and got in line. I was buying a Nintendo DS game. Another 5-year-old child was here begging her mom to buy one game. She eventually accepted after begging enough. Then this kid proceeded to ask for another game. Mother said, "No, you chose this one first. We get this one." But the kid was begging. Eventually, after enough begging, he got her to go, "Okay, you pick this one instead." But the kid was still begging because he wanted the first game he chose too. It's one or the other, we're not getting both. Mother's voice started building. Kid went going back and forth between the games he wanted. Eventually, the mother sighed and proceeded without another word to buy both games. I have taught my 3-year-old that he can get something at a store some of the times. Generally, if he's been on good behavior, he gets to choose what it is, but he only gets one item. If he chooses something new, he has to put back the other item. Once you give in, there is no going back. They learn so fast. We do that too. Generally, it's a spur of the moment, so we can't even anticipate it, and once he picks, it's done. I've also had him throw a fit for candy while I'm checking out, with it where I still purchased it and told him it was mine now because he screamed at me. Never cried about candy again. Note, I didn't eat it in front of him. I just told him, "You're acting up and you're not getting it." I was at a family reunion a few years back. Me and my friend, who I brought along, decided to go swimming in the hotel pool. We were swimming and this little girl tried playing with us, so we played with her. After a while, my friend told me, "I don't think anyone is watching her." So we asked her and she said no. This girl said she was 5 and she was with her brothers. I went to the front desk and told them there was a little girl unsupervised in the pool and told them her name, and they called the family. We waited with the girl for a few hours and even fed her. Finally, someone did come and get her, and I remember this exactly. "Are you Paul's kids?" the man said, and they responded with, yes, and they left. The sad part is the dad couldn't be bothered to watch her come get his 5-year-old kid and her 8-year-old brothers. Probably also couldn't be bothered to have that whole, "don't go anywhere with strangers" talk. A mother I knew had a kid who fell off a piece of playground equipment and fractured his pelvis. I saw the kid about 5 years later. He walked with a pronounced limp, his whole body twisting around as he took steps. From what I heard, his mother stopped taking him to the physical therapy appointments the city was paying for because they were too inconvenient and he'll be fine. And while the 5-year-old was recovering, made him run errands all over their apartment instead of rest and heal up, because she was too lazy to get up off the couch and get her own snacks and drinks out of the kitchen. When I was a child, my mother would load us into the car when it was nearly out of gas. She'd drive for miles with the gas tank light on and force us to pick out bridges that we were going to live under, telling us that when the car ran out of gas, that's where we would stop and have to live. She spent the entire drive telling us that we were nothing but a burden to her, and she would be happy if she didn't have to pay for us kids. My parents were divorced, and my father was an alcoholic that had died after the divorce. Our nearest family was 800 miles away, and we had no family or other support. My sisters and I would sob quietly in the back seat as my mom ran through her spiel. Then when she thought she'd terrified us enough, she'd fill up the car and take us home. I still get mildly panicked when the gas light comes on when I'm in the car. And now for something completely different. Some years ago, I was at an airport and a woman was traveling with 2 young children. She was at the terminal next to mine, and their flight was delayed. Everyone was frustrated and the kids were starting to get restless. Sensing this, she sits down between them and loudly says, "Tell me a story!" This is something I think that they had done countless times before, because the kids seemed to know what was up. One of them starts with, "Well, there were 2 kids at the airport," and the mom excitedly asks, "What were they doing at the airport?" The little one pipes up with, "Fighting dragons!" And so the mom asks more questions about whether they found the dragons immediately or if they had to search for them, and what they did on their search, and what they were wearing to fight the dragons, and if the dragons were friendly but misunderstood, and so on and so forth. The kids told the story, but the mom kept making them give more details and suggested outcomes. This woman kept 2 small children at an airport, plus all of the hard-eyed onlookers and listeners completely spellbound for at least an hour. They just talked quietly and told stories. It didn't just entertain the kids, but it made them use their imagination, and it softened the mood of everyone around them. I didn't hear if the adventurers got the dragons because my plane started to board, but was one of the most graceful bits of parenting I've ever seen. I wanted to give that woman a hug. Me and my fiance, 22 and 21, live up at college with her little sister. Me and the fiance wanted to get a dog this year, so we searched and searched for a good deal on a place that would let us have the dogs that we wanted. The entire time we were searching, her sister was berating us for not signing a lease with a place that won't allow dogs. She is basically the type of person who thinks that if you don't do what she wants, then you're the worst human being ever. Anyway, we find a place and get our dogs. 2 months later, after we move in, the little sister starts saying she wants to get a dog. I say hell no. After about a week of her complaining to her parents that she wants a dog, her mom gives in and lets her get one. I stand my ground and will not allow it to stay in our house because we signed a lease only agreeing to me and my fiance's 2 dogs. Plus it's too small of a house for 3 big dogs. So she goes and picks out a puppy at the local animal shelter, and the next weekend she takes it home to her parents too, and as she puts it, keep at their house because I'm an ass and threatened to take it back to the shelter. The dog has now lived at their parents' house for 8 months with little to no interaction with her, but she still says it's her dog. As I'm sure you can tell, this is a spoiled brat who has never been told no before. I have many more stories if anyone wants to hear them. Once went with my husband to a house owned by one of his coworkers. Their son picked up a toy gun, said, "Watch this," put the barrel in his mouth and pull the trigger. I know it was a toy, but damn man, this crap screwed me up. The dad just laughed and told him it didn't count if it didn't go boom. I still think about that crap. That is so fricked up. What is probably your most elitist viewpoint? I don't want trashy people in my neighborhood. Wow, an actual elitist opinion. I can't believe I actually found one. If you can't handle your own finances, let alone that of a child, you shouldn't reproduce until you can. OMG, I'm having this argument with my brother and sister-in-law right now. They can't afford their rent and aren't using birth control. But birth control is expensive, am I right? A professor at school once said this to my class. So it isn't necessarily my viewpoint, but just because you're poor doesn't mean you're interesting. It was in a beginner's creative writing course. I had a professor tell us this as well. He also said that drugs don't make you more creative. They just make you think you are creative. My father used to say, I don't drink to make myself more interesting. I drink to make my friends seem more interesting. Remember folks, sort this by controversial if you want to read viewpoints that are actually elitist and not more or less accepted. This might be the most elitist comment. Politicians shouldn't be a mirror of society, as they should be intelligent and highly educated. How about we just properly educate our society? We should, but even among a highly educated society, the policymakers should still be the best and the brightest. People without a relevant background in science, education, energy, etc. shouldn't be doing public policy in areas for which that knowledge is relevant. I think it is far fairer to say that policymakers should rely on expert advertisers in areas where their knowledge is insufficient. That was supposed to be the point of the cabinet. Unfortunately, they never set up any rules about having to actually appoint someone who actually knew anything about the topic that they're supposed to represent. If you don't use the Oxford comma, you are a peasant. Irony. You are missing a regular comma. Commas after subordinate clauses and constructs like the above are actually optional. If you can't afford a babysitter for 2 hours, you can't afford a movie. By that same token, if you can't afford a dog sitter for a week, then you can't afford to go to Europe, Nikki. There should be an adults-only section on airplanes or entire child-free flights. No, I don't hate children. Yes, I would be willing to pay more for either of these situations. First class is usually childless. You can still hear the screams of children from first class. Don't get a pet if you can't give it a decent life. That means no puny but cute hamster cages, keeping social animals alone, feeding your pet bad foods, and no freaking fish bowls. God, I hate tiny pet enclosures. The cruelest thing that nobody cares about. At my college in a hot part of California, I know too many sorority girls with huskies and malamutes that they never walk, but they're so cute. Those dogs need to be walked at least a mile per day. There's a family that lives above me in a 500 square foot apartment with a 90-pound husky that they keep locked outside on their teeny balcony 24/7. He pees and poops up there and everything. My SO and I have seen them walk the poor guy a total of twice in the year that we have lived here. He cries every morning when we take our dog out to play ball. It breaks my heart. We called ASPCA and the landlord multiple times, but I guess they didn't do anything. If you're doing or saying something stupid, getting called out on it is not merely what you deserve, but it's the ethical duty of people around you to make you aware of it. That includes you too, beat meeting. I hope so. I don't want to continue looking like or being a dumbass any longer than necessary. Skyrim belongs to the Nords. Some people don't deserve to be in the Cloud District. Do you get to the Cloud District very often? Oh, what am I saying? Of course you don't. Not everyone should go to university. This is based on my own experiences and seeing friends who haven't gone to university and doing well for themselves. I think that the education system steers kids to go to university because it will set them up for life. I feel this is untrue. Whether or not everyone should go to university is elitist comes down to whether you mean not everyone would be better off if they went to university, or not everyone deserves to go to university. You seem to mean the former, and I think that's more practical than elitist. It's lazy parenting to not monitor or set screen time limits for little kids. Then blame the games. I know it's my responsibility to limit my son's time on Fortnite, but I don't want to deal with the tantrum, so I let him do what he wants. It's the game developer's fault for making the game too addictive. My mother pisses me off so much for this. She talks about how kids are having social issues all because of technology, and that video games ruin XYZ. On Christmas, she was like, technology is good and bad. Look at my kids. They would rather play Fortnite than talk with the family. No crap. When you were a kid and got a new toy, would you rather ignore adults you have nothing in common with and play, or talk with them? She constantly talks about how kids should be outside playing constantly, and it annoys the crap out of me. As if previous generations did not stay inside. Maybe kids just don't want to play outside all the damn time. She has this massive obsession with kids being active all the time, and it pisses me off to no end. The idea that sports and being outside is less exciting to some people than video games infuriates her for some reason. I just wish she understood the concept that anything is bad in accession. Of course, it's bad if all kids do is play video games. She has almost no understanding of them, yet has such strong opinions about them. Yeah, sure, Dr. Oz isn't rotting brains, but Fortnite is. When I was a kid, everyone was outside all the time. I'm sure other people hear this, and I really think it's mostly nostalgia-fueled with only a small hint of truth, and the small truth has to do with there being less to do inside than before. People who get sucked into MLM schemes probably have low IQs, especially the oily people. This is definitely elitist, so I gave an upvote. But there are books and cult studies that show even smart and educated people fall for this stuff. It usually has to do with the current emotional state, often recently experienced a loss of some kind. I think part of the allure of MLMs is the friends that they get when they join. They are instantly part of a team, and it helps cloud their vision when they aren't making money or successful. I have the absolute best taste in music. This is the best answer in this thread. A lot of mental illnesses are bullcrap excuses to make people feel better about themselves or convince themselves they aren't a prick. Honestly, I get your point. I'm tired of people using anxiety as a stupid excuse to be lazy. Everyone has anxiety. Get over it. Everybody is anxious. Medical anxiety can be crippling. There is no conspiracy to destroy coal. The industry is dying because people just don't need or want it anymore, which is why coal towns have become hollowed-out cesspools. It's called learning another trade and moving somewhere else. What gets me is 2 or 3 generations ago, people moved from everywhere in the world, often traveling for weeks or months overseas, sometimes not speaking English at all, to take good jobs in coal mines. Now the descendants of those people feel that moving somewhere else to take a good job is ridiculous or impossible. If you like modern pop music, you just straight up have bad taste in music. Deal with it. Ah, the old "my subjective opinion is objective." Nice. The question literally asks, what is your most elitist viewpoint? There is no white privilege or male privilege. The reason why white males are often the more successful people is that society is set up in a way where whites and males are held to the responsibilities for their actions, more so than blacks and females, which allows them to improve more. If a black person fails, society will let them blame it on racism and factors out of their control. When a woman fails, society will let them blame it on sexism and factors out of their control. But when white people and men fail, they are given no such excuses and aren't allowed to blame anyone but themselves. So every time they fail, they use that as an opportunity to improve themselves so they won't fail again. Whereas a black person or woman is less motivated to improve themselves because they blame their failures on reasons out of their control. And then, since white people and men seek to improve themselves more, that is the reason they are often more successful. If you want more black people and women in high positions, then the only way that is going to happen is by making it so they are held to higher responsibility for their actions. Sounds like a white male privileged opinion to me. Sounds like an elitist viewpoint. Any sort of flowery, overdramatic writing is crap. Shakespeare is a good example of terrible writing. Anybody can do it. Real, honest writing is bare bones and simple. It is also extremely rare. You're not smart or special for reading on a regular basis. The vast majority of books are as bad as TV. Minimum wage jobs should not be used to make a living, as most of them are low-skill jobs, and the difference between living wage and minimum wage should not be passed on to the consumer, i.e. tipping, minimum wage increases, etc. You say this, but your ass still wants to go to Taco Bell and get fed a chalupa by people you think are less human than you are. They literally contribute to your quality of life. Why shouldn't they deserve a living wage? Is their humanity not worth a few extra dollars? Why are you so aggressive? Nowhere did I say that they are less human. I'm saying that it shouldn't be a living wage because it's less skilled. Unfortunately, the United States isn't a pure socialist society, and therefore, why should I as a taxpayer supplement working people's wages? This is different from Social Security, unemployment, Medicaid, food stamps, etc., as the people that are on those programs typically aren't employed. I have 2 friends that work minimum wage jobs and get their degrees at universities. They pay for school themselves and loans and are about to graduate and get paid a livable wage amount. If you're going to live in another country, take time to learn that country's language. There's no reason after 10 years you still can't hold a basic conversation in their native language. Free market capitalism is the only answer. All government programs and systems will eventually fail, even in Scandinavia. Also, you shouldn't have kids if you can't afford them. I don't care how much you want them. Kids can think for themselves. Let's stop blaming parents for the actions of like 14-year-olds. Free market capitalism is just turning the world over to the 1%. You need regulation because people are evil and greedy. The majority of people have no special interests, hobbies, or unique opinions and can't carry a conversation beyond whatever latest TV series, movie, or news headline is currently trending in pop culture. A unique opinion isn't necessarily one that should be heard. Reminds me of Hitch when he said, "Everyone has a novel inside of them. For most of them, that is where it should stay." If you can't afford a good tip, you can't afford to go out to eat. Also, if you don't tip when you received good service, you should be shot into the sun. That's where I disagree. Paying tips is supporting a broken system. By my not paying tips, workers get angry, and this hopefully catalyses unions, which can change the system. Nice way of saying, I'm just another cheap asshole. As a guy who is 4'0" due to achondroplastic dwarfism, able-bodied women who say, I'm also technically a dwarf or little person because they are 4'10", or even worse, 5'0" or something, it honestly takes me so much energy to hold back my disdain when that happens. Don't know if this is elitist as much as justifiable anger at that statement. Kinda seems like the, I'm technically 1/12/48 Native American thing that tends to also piss people off. Texting or browsing your phone while driving should carry the same penalties as a DUI or DWI. Self-driving cars can't come soon enough. Self-driving cars are going to kill a lot of people, and if you want to fix transportation and land use problems, you need to look back in time at some simple options, rather than think technology will solve everything. You got a source for that claim? If you're a net recipient of tax funds, you shouldn't get to vote. I knew it was a good idea to sort by controversial. That's how I got here. I personally believe people who were born with genetic disorders, such as myself, should not have children. That's not to say I believe in forcing them to not have children, but they should decide not to have children. Also, I believe if there's a good chance a child will be born with a genetic disorder, they should not be born. Again, I'm not for forced sterilization. It's worth stating that this doesn't mean such a person couldn't be a parent. There are many kids out there in need of loving parents. Yeah, I'm all for adoption. In fact, adoption would be preferable. That democracy is flawed. A benevolent and enlightened monarchy would be best. Democracy isn't flawed, but applying democracy to a global context is very flawed. Strong nationalism is important to enforce great democracy. Patriotism. Let's stop trying to normalize the term nationalists. Nationalists are so close to being fascists that it shouldn't be anything people are proud to be. If anything more than patriotism is what is required to maintain a democracy, then that democracy has failed. IG, another elitist idea. Emotional support animals are complete bullcrap. If it's not a trained service animal, it does not count. I've seen too many poorly trained emotional support animals in public disturbing peace, upsetting people, and sometimes being frankly dangerous, but no one can do anything because it has a vest off the internet. Thank you. My old college roommate was able to keep a dog, Irish setter, in our very small apartment because of this. Regular pets weren't allowed. This woman did not spend any time with that poor dog, and would often lock him out of her room when she was home. He wouldn't have food or water half the time, and our other roommates had to pick up the slack. In the end, her dog was the one who actually needed the emotional support. Any music with lyrics gets old after a few listens at best. Or maybe you're listening to the wrong songs. People who are free thinkers or dissidents are just birds of a different flock. There are nearly 8 billion of us alive right now, and 100 billion before us. You're not special, so get off your high horse and stop acting like the next messiah. If you want to be part of the nonconformists, you have to dress all black and smoke cigarettes. Goth kids in a South Park episode. If you can't afford to tip your waiter at least 15%, you should cook your own meals. If you can't afford to pay your staff a living wage, you shouldn't run a business. Exactly. Screw this broken-ass tipping system. The chosen people who learn to slow down instant gratification will rule the world. Isn't there that one psychology experiment that essentially proves this? Young children who were willing to wait for 2 cookies rather than get one immediately went on to earn higher incomes than their impatient counterparts. Immediately? You can't meet people sitting on the damn couch playing video games. Get off the internet and get out in public. I've met some of my best friends through the internet, though. I don't know if this counts, but every time I step into a Walmart, I feel mentally and physically superior to everyone else in the store. That's just how it works when you walk into Walmart. Off the top of my head, for a long time I thought I hated steak. I would eat it and wonder what I wasn't getting. It was just tasteless and chewy. Then I actually went to a really nice fancy steak restaurant in London where the steaks start at PS40, and my god, the difference in quality was immediately apparent. Cheap steak sucks. Pizza is the exact opposite. Pizza has to be truly, truly awful to not be worth eating. Even some of the cheapest oven and microwave pizzas are just delicious. Total comfort food. That everyone who can be a vegetarian, i.e. no serious medical condition in the way, doesn't have to hunt for food, enough money to get by without fast food, or bargain meats for calories, etc., should be. I try not to judge, but it's the way I was raised, and it's overall so much more sustainable for the Earth. LOL. You do realize that we are omnivores as a species, right? You do realize humans are currently driving the planet towards being uninhabitable for ourselves? Even just egotistically speaking, it would be very useful. If you put ketchup on your fries as opposed to the side, you are a barbaric individual. If you aren't playing on an Ethernet cable connection, don't play online unless it's with friends who are okay with it. It's not 2004. Don't get in the left lane unless you're planning to go above the speed limit with the flow of traffic. Otherwise, stay in the right if you can handle it. There are too many people who change lanes for absolutely no apparent reason. As soon as there are unrecognizable alternatives, petri dish variations, the viewpoint of vegans will become common sense. The main reason people don't accept vegan ethics is because it's difficult to transition. The voting age should be raised back to 21. I'd be more supportive of creating a maximum voting age, maybe 70 or 80 or so, if you aren't going to be around to deal with the repercussions. People should only be allowed to use the overhead compartments in their seating section. No more back of the plane riffraff using up my bin. It creates chaos. Yes, and carry-ons should actually be designed to fit exactly in the allotted amount of space. You're going through a rough patch and probably a bit sad. This doesn't mean you have depression. Depression is serious, and jumping on the train just to get some attention and make yourself seem more interesting is just low. That goes for the majority of celebs too. As someone who has depression and has been through medication and therapy, and who works with mentally ill people for a living, I feel like there's a worrying trend emerging where we're treating normal reactions to stressful or upsetting events as mental illness. I personally think there's something seriously wrong when people are being medicated for grief if a relative dies, for example. Grief and a whole host of other negative emotions are a natural part of life and have been for millions of years. SF, LA, and NYC are much too nice to the homeless and are just attracting more. If you can't take care of yourself and are harassing strangers for money, you lose rights. Government should ship them, involuntarily if necessary, to low-cost living areas. As a tax-paying citizen, I have a right to use my parks, feel safe at night, not be surrounded by human feces and mentally ill people, not have my car windows broken non-stop, etc. I don't know why we accept this. I hate what you are saying, but you actually answered the question correctly. Pets are not kids. Having a dog is nothing like having a human child. Even worse are those people who had dogs and then became parents and say they still love their dog as much as their child. To them, I say that either something is wrong with your relationship with your child, or something is wrong with your relationship with your pet. Yes, yes, yes. Don't compare anything your kid does to what your dog does. Had a family friend compare having her dog put down to having a child die. If you say that crap, you have never had to deal with an unexpected death or the death of a child. Outliving your child is a parent's worst nightmare come true. Putting down a pet isn't comparable. You should not be allowed to have children if you aren't able to bring them up, both financially and emotionally. People don't like metal because they don't understand its technical complexity and nuance of it. They think the vocals are abrasive and never allow themselves to discover how amazing good metal is. I don't actually believe this, but that's my intrusive thought anytime someone insults metal. America, regardless of its flaws, is the best country on this planet, and everyone who says it isn't can suck it. Everyone downvoting you on their American-created smartphones on their American-created internet is acting like the footprints on the moon are not measured in US sizes. No one knows what happens after death, and religion needs to quit acting as it does. The entire universe is in existence, and the only thing that matters in death is what happens in our immediate environment on Earth. Earth is nothing to the universe. What's God or anything got to do with anything? What in actuality would literally the entire universe be for if the only thing that mattered was Earth and the humans on it? The animals don't even matter. It's just human interaction with other humans. Why is Venus the way it is? Why is the sun the color it is? Is it hot or cold in heaven? Will I still have my sense of self, or is even that gone in death? If the sense of self comes from the body, who's to say that the sense of self experiencing life will be the same self that experiences death? What proof do you have that the same sense of self is what moves on? There is zero guarantees. I need religion to calm down. No one knows what happens, it's just a belief, a faith. Morals are human, not universal. Taste and class are passed down from parents, not purchased with money. Good taste is often acquired from exposure to the finer things in life. Class, however, is a learned set of behaviors that anyone from any financial background may have in spades. True class is self-confidence but never arrogance, the ability to put others at ease, whatever the situation. Just because you have a child doesn't make you a parent. You just have a trophy or accident. You're just another organism who knows nothing about raising a child, praying that your child doesn't end up being the next school shooter. When your child grows up to be a functional and productive member of society, then you can call yourself a parent. A driver's license should be a privilege, not a right. Way too many people have driver's licenses. It is a privilege, that's why it's a license. It can be revoked. I think the US military takes advantage of poor and uneducated youths. Tattoos and body modifications don't make you interesting, especially if you get generic cookie-cutter designs or pop culture references that have nothing to do with you as an individual. Canned soup is dreadful. The ability to speak does not make you intelligent. Well, I don't consider my views as a vegan to be elitist at all, but I would assume that in the eyes of most society, I'd be viewed in that way, so let's go with that. Really depends on how you go about it. My cousin is a vegan, isn't snobbish about it at all, have no issue making a small vegan dish for her at parties. Now if she would throw a fit every time someone eats meat or a non-vegan food item in her presence, I'm absolutely not elitist at all when it comes to interacting with non-vegans. I don't believe you get anywhere by being disrespectful. I suppose what I meant by my post was that some people may view me as an elitist by default, just because I am a vegan. What strange thing did you find out about someone else that they thought was perfectly normal? There was this guy I went to college with. When he was in the shower, if the urge hit him, he would just take a crap in the shower instead of getting out to use the toilet. He did this the whole time he was a kid, apparently. And it wasn't until he got to college and had to share bathroom facilities that he found out other people showering in adjacent stalls weren't cool with smelling crap as he waffle stomped a log down the drain. What the heck? Seriously. I was showering with my son when he was a toddler and he asked if it was okay to pee while in the shower. I told him that it was sometimes okay if he really had to go, but that it was never okay to poop in the shower. He said, that would be yucky. A few weeks prior, he licked the door of a public restroom stall while waiting for me to finish. He even had a higher standard than taking a crap in the bathroom tub. What the frick is wrong with this guy? I was talking to my husband on the phone and he told me to hang on. He had to put his clothes back on. He was at work. I asked what the hell he was doing and apparently he always takes his clothes off to take a dump, even at work. I knew he did it at home, but he would always then take a shower after, so I figured it was just a preface to showering. He said he balances them over the stall so that they don't get poop particles on them. I told him no one else does this. He didn't notice because in the men's room he's used for the last 10 years, there's only one stall. I'm not sure why no colleague ever asked him why he's hanging clothes over the stall door. I know so many people who do this. Why? How insanely messy is the everyday poop that you have to get completely naked? I worked with a guy who had some kind of gut problem, and he'd be sitting at his desk and vomit into a cup. Not a lot, but like a verp, a few times a day, even in meetings. Finally, his boss talked to him and said that it was not cool and that he should see a doctor. The guy was surprised. Why? He asked. He apparently had been doing this all of his life. He went to a doctor and, what do you know? They had medicine for his condition. The guy grew up in some country where his condition was never addressed, either because of poverty or neglect. Probably both, but the damage was already done. Everyone avoided the vomit guy. He was eventually let go. Verp? Verp is a word? Like vomit plus burp? I have honestly never heard that before and it's making me laugh. It's funny because when I read it, I knew exactly what the word meant and it was literally the first time I've ever heard it. My friend genuinely believed that leprechaun was just a term for indigenous Irish little people. He's been drinking paint again, hasn't he? His hobbies include magnets. My friend didn't know martinis were normally served in giant water-sized glasses and thought she was getting ripped off when she ordered one at the bar. Her parents were alcoholics. 28-year-old at work, takes a dump with the seat up, arse directly on the porcelain. What the hell does he think the seat is for? So the lid doesn't get lonely? For girls. Duh. My ex and her entire family share a toothbrush. She argued it like they were all sharing a hairbrush. Glad that ended. Oh, gross. A friend told me about her roommate who keeps a large bin full of bread under her bed. Every week she buys a new loaf and adds it to the bin. She doesn't actually eat that much bread, but has a huge bin full. This reminds me of a conversation I had with a friend recently about sleep paralysis and general sleep problems. I asked, you know that feeling when you wake up with tears running down your face and realize you had been crying in your sleep? He replied, no, are you okay? Your friend's roommate might have either starved as a child or grew up really poor. Hoarding or hiding food like that is usually an indicator. It basically serves as a psychological comfort thing that she won't go hungry because she always has the bread. So she keeps it there just in case. This is the answer. I worked with foster youth who have experienced severe poverty and food instability. This behavior is extremely common, even years after they get out of that situation. One time, my best friend and I were on a voice chat as it was getting pretty late. At one point, he said that he should probably head to bed because he was starting to see gory and otherwise disturbing things. Apparently, he has hallucinations every so often and just assumed that it was normal to see stuff when you get tired. I tend to hear weird crap when I get tired, and that's usually my cue to try and sleep. I also struggle with insomnia though, so it happens a lot. Crap sucks, man. I can't drive when I'm tired because I see crazy crap, like people standing in the middle of the freeway. Guy had 3 nuts. Thought he just had an extra testicle. We told him it was probably a tumor. It was. That almost made my peen hurt, so whoever told him it was probably a tumor, how did they find out about his 3rd nut? He was bragging about it and showing everyone in a rec league hockey locker room. My friend last night was like, you know when you think you're starting to get sick and you get super tired, your nose is runny and your throat is phlegmy? And we're all like, yeah? And she says, and then your hands go completely numb? And we're all like, nope, that's definitely just you. My neighbors ate their cornflakes with orange juice instead of milk. Their parents had conditioned them all to think that this was normal and acceptable behavior. I'm calling Child Protective Services right now. They carried a pizza box sideways under their arm. I'm so glad it made the other people as uneasy as it made me. It was a neighbor at a neighborhood pizza party that was kind of strange already. Every time someone talks about him, I'm like, I knew he was strange since the pizza box incident. Pizza shop employee here. People do this with some regularity, and it's never not disturbing. I can only imagine they are aliens from another planet, a la Third Rock from the Sun, who just gobble the pizza by scooping up the mess with their hands and stuffing their faces with sauce and cheese all over their faces and hands. My roommate in college thought that you washed clothes on every single cycle on the washing machine. Our machine had a delicate cycle, a cotton cycle, a solo rinse cycle, a permanent press cycle, etc. He always complained about the washer taking forever because he was washing his clothes 4 to 5 times every time he did laundry. Good lord, water bills for days. When my friend makes mac and cheese, she puts the cheese powder, milk, and butter into the boiling water. The instructions are on the box. Apply directly to the forehead. I know someone at work that eats oranges with the peel on. I'm pretty sure he is a psychopath. There was a chick in my math class at university who would always come to class, peel a lemon, then proceed to eat it like nothing. I eat lemons from time to time. Once you get through the sourness, they're really sweet. Always drink some water afterwards to get the acids off your teeth though. I had a friend whose parents would buy a gallon of whole milk and pour half a gallon into another jug, then mix water into both to dilute it. She always just thought that other people got a different brand of milk because drinking milk at a friend's house always tasted different. Her grandparents did it too. Really weirded me out when I saw her mom just pour milk into an empty jug and mix water with it. I 100% guarantee you that their grandparents learned that in the Great Depression. The Dust Bowl is when people started putting plates and glasses away upside down to keep the dust out. All of my friends did it. My parents still do it. That'd be another good Ask Reddit. What's some weird crap people do for reasons that no longer exist? My friend has 2 older sisters and didn't realize that guys don't wrap the towel around their whole body until he came to college. I do the towel thing, only because when I get off the shower I'm freezing and wrapping the towel around me keeps me warmer. I feel this. My towel rack is right above the vent for the bathroom and feels so good putting the towel on in the winter. My dad's parents never told him to brush his teeth, and he told me that he used to eat a whole can of condensed milk every day as a kid. He still thinks it's perfectly normal. I don't know. and he just wondered why one day his teeth fell out. Only when he was in his 20s, someone told him that brushing helps. How do his teeth look now? They need some milk. Had a roommate who didn't know you needed to wash potatoes. She made some potato dish and it was gritty. No kidding, you gotta scrub those. That potato skin is coarse. Even when I know a potato has been properly cleaned, I always think about the dirt that was on the potato beforehand. One of my friends genuinely cannot taste basil. He always thought that basil was some tasteless leaf that people like to put on pizza. He once ate a bowl of basil leaves like a salad. OMG, not kidding, I did not know basil has a taste to it. I've eaten that stuff like your friend. I just put dressing on it and eat it. Basil is one of my favorite flavors in all of food. I use it in almost every savory dish, especially with tomatoes. I would be seriously upset if I woke up not being able to taste basil. My friend thought that everyone was regularly taking worming tablets to stop getting worms. It wasn't until she got married and told her husband she was going to go pick up their worming tablets that she found out it wasn't normal. Depends where in the world you live, and how sanitary your surroundings are, I guess. My family has always had pets and we live in Africa, so my mom would buy dewormers twice a year, and deworm the pets at the same time. If I travel to any tropical countries, I usually deworm on my return as I eat street food. It did not occur to me to do this after travel. My stomach has been weird for a while. Maybe I'll try it for a while. Until my early 20s, I thought lucid dreams were the norm. I cringed thinking of all the times I heard someone describe a bad dream and said something along the lines of, "Why didn't you just change the dream?" Growing up, I said this to several close family members and not one told me that it was weird. I thought that until high school too. When I told my high school friends I knew I was dreaming when I dreamt, they acted like that was impossible and I was confused. I have a good story for this one. I always wanted to lucid dream but was never able to. But then, I was finally in a dream where I knew I was going on and I was like, "I'm gonna fly, baby!" I prepared myself to fly in my dream and I jumped and nothing happened. RIP. I lived with a girl that would eat baby powder that she had stashed in the drawer of the bathroom. She would walk by the bathroom and do quick shakes of the bottle right in her mouth. She would also buy whole frozen fish from Walmart and take them out of the freezer bag and slap them hard against the brick kitchen floor before cooking them in a stew. That's a witch. A coworker, mid-20s, Midwest born and raised, sat down with spaghetti one day for lunch. After twiddling the noodles around with the fork for a while, he looked at me and asked, "How do you eat this?" Thinking it was a joke, I laughed at him and kept eating. He looked at me with a straight face and said, "I've never had spaghetti." Life is amazing. I'm actually impressed that he just asked you and didn't shy away from it. Good on him. My grandma fed me hot dog water in the form of hot cocoa with recycled boiled hot dog water. She thought it was okay to do and just told me years later. I remember trick-or-treating as a kid, and a house in one of those cookie-cutter neighborhoods gave out hot dogs and hot chocolate. The cocoa always tasted like hot dogs, and I always had my suspicions. My friend puts lotion directly on her feet and then rubs her feet together. That's genius. Me. Don't you hate getting hit by those first few seconds of icy water when you turn on the shower? Roommate. What do you mean? Me. Like in the morning when you're standing in the shower and you have to turn it on for the first time and it's really cold on your skin. Roommate. Wait, do you turn the shower on after getting in? Me. No. That was the day my mind was blown by the fact that you could turn the water on before getting in. I was like 23 when I learned this. Wow, you had been torturing yourself needlessly for like decades. Even worse, I used to try to contort my body against the shower stall to avoid getting cold water on myself. My aunt put a fence around the pool to keep the ducks out. She didn't believe us when we told her they could just fly over it. Does this count? Well, pools should have fences anyway. I knew someone who didn't eat any kind of fruit, not due to an allergy, but just because. I was never served fruit as a kid because it was too expensive where I lived. Now, as an adult, I can't handle the tastes or textures of fruit. Occasionally, I will force myself to eat some, but it is not something I enjoy. My mother served us canned fruit cocktails a lot because fresh fruit was so expensive. We learned to like it and used to fight over the cherry halves in the cans because they were so rare. So it was a random day with nothing special about it. My fiance and I are at the local grocery store shopping for the usual staple items. We usually keep some form of frozen chicken and veggies for a quick meal in the event I'm too tired or lazy to cook anything for the week. Well, we're walking down the aisle that has ice cream on one side and all of the convenience items like Hot Pockets, pizza rolls, and stuff like that. My fiance is talking about something and comes to a full halt with a stomp of her foot and does a hard triple take and goes, "Shut up! You can buy corn dogs?" I was like, is that a joke? She thought you could only buy corn dogs at the regional carnival or fair that comes around here in October. So did you guys get the corn dogs? Oh yeah, we sure did. We had them for dinner for a whole week. I have a friend that thought it was normal to go 2+ weeks without a sip of water. I had a patient tell me if God wanted her to drink more water, he would have made it taste better. I was roommates with a guy for several months, and I began to notice that he was a picky eater. I would always offer him food, and he always declined, sometimes looking at the food in disgust. Admittedly, I'm an adventurous eater, often eating a lot of various ethnic foods and unusual stuff. After a while, I got curious enough to ask him about his diet, and he opened up. The dude ate plain cheeseburgers, cheese pizza, mac and cheese, hot dogs, chicken nuggets, ice cream, and pretty much nothing else. He was about 25 at the time and had the diet of an 8-year-old. He openly admitted that he hated all vegetables and only ate bread, meat, and cheese. He hated Mexican food, Chinese food, salads, and anything even slightly spicy. He thought I was the weird one and that I was just trying to be different by eating all this weird stuff. This must be fairly common because I've heard it come up a lot, and the term for it is apparently kid palate. My brother-in-law hasn't tried a new food since he was about 7, and we all just say, "Oh yeah, Tyler has a kid palate," like it's an affliction. I've had conversations with totally different people who use the same term. I worked with someone who didn't realize women wipe every time they pee. Hope it was a guy, otherwise, yikes. It was a guy. He said, "Why do women go through so much toilet paper? How much are they dumping?" And we all just looked at him like, who's gonna tell him? In grade 5, our teacher was running a discussion about words, and why it's important to choose the right words to express yourself during writing assignments. He asked what some of our favorite or least favorite words were, and why, so we could expand our vocabulary. We're all taking turns until it gets to my friend Paige's turn. She gives her favorite word and explains it's her favorite because of how sweet it is. We all just assumed she meant how nice it was. She then gives her least favorite word, explaining she hates how sour it is. At this point, the class is looking at each other going, "She just said sour, right?" Turns out she has a type of synesthesia, which is a rare condition that causes a person to taste certain tastes when speaking or even thinking certain words. She had lived her whole life thinking it was completely normal to taste words, because it's such a unique and strange thing that nobody would ever talk about it as a condition. She had tests done later that year, and there were actual chemical changes in her brain and saliva when certain words were said. Pretty fascinating. My wife has synesthesia and thought it was the same for everyone until she was about 30 when she saw a book titled "Wednesday is Indigo Blue," and she turned to me and said, "But Wednesday is navy blue, right?" And I was like, "What are you talking about, woman?" I was actually very nice about it, and it's super interesting. She sees different patterns and colors when she hears different types of music, and each number, letter, name, etc. has its own unique color that never changes. My roommate absolutely cannot have the room fan or any type of wind or breeze blowing on him while he eats. You had me until the last word. I thought you were going to say sleep. I can't go to sleep unless the back of my left ankle is wedged between my right big toe and the second toe. I was 30 before someone asked about it. I'm trying it out right now. It's very uncomfortable. This one is about me. In my early 20s, I started having a lot of pain in my upper left jaw. My dentist said there was nothing wrong with my teeth and that I should go see a sinus specialist. Get to the ORL, ear, nose, and throat doctor, and they comment on how stuffed up I must be. I'm slightly baffled and say that I'm actually breathing much easier that day than usual. And that was the day I found out that most people can breathe through their noses most of the time and not just on special occasions. Turns out I'm allergic to dust mites in a "how have you not had anaphylaxis and died" way, and had been experiencing an allergy attack for 23 straight years. That doctor visit legitimately changed my life. I no longer had to choose between breathing and eating. My friend thought that everyone ate cereal without milk. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind eating dry cereal, but they thought it was weird that people would put milk in their cereal on TV commercials and shows, etc. They didn't know that this was a thing people really did. My grandma has 2 toothbrushes, one for the morning and one for the evening. This is the most wholesome thing in this thread. This happened to me. Growing up, I was conditioned by my mother to not only use soap on my body while showering, but to use it in my hair too. Doing this made my hair feel insanely rough and dry, but I kept at it thinking it was the right thing to do. On a trip to California to meet some friends, I took a shower and they didn't have a bar of soap. I confronted my friend about it, asking what they used in their hair as a substitute for soap. Everyone in the room gave me a strange look and told me that soap wasn't supposed to be used for hair. I was around 18 years old when I found this out. My dad did this because he liked being fast. I'll blame it on his military life. We finally convinced him to use shampoo and conditioner. He's in love with how his hair feels. Goofy man. Now if I can convince him to stop brushing out his curls. A lawyer I used to work with would trim his toenails during conference calls in his office. Toenails, not fingernails, meaning he removed his shoes and socks and pawed all over his stinky feet while on the phone. Never got over that. One of my friends won't let me visit her at home because she says she hates feeling like a hostess. We've been friends for 6 years, so we only hang out at my place or in coffee shops. Your friend may be a hoarder, or their parents. Had a friend who I took shooting when we were like 20. He's never shot before, and when he was trying to aim, he was tilting his head strangely. When I questioned him about it, he said, "Well, which eye do you see out of?" He had been blind in one eye his entire life and thought everyone was like that. There's no way. There's no way at all. Was he raised by mutes? My 13-year-old friend didn't know what he wanted from McDonald's because they never go there. He then proceeded to tell me that they only go to Wendy's and that they are a Pepsi family. Wow, corporate really got that family locked down. My sister said to me once, "Hey, what dream did you choose last night?" I was so confused. She explained that every night she goes into a dream room and picks what she wants to dream about. I got super jealous. Not a friend, but something I didn't find out until my wife pointed it out. I thought it was completely normal for your eyes to be unfocused naturally when you're tired. 7-year-old me remembers reading late into the night and having to cover one eye and then switch eyes in order to keep reading. Fast forward to being married, my wife offhandedly mentions sometimes she doesn't know which eye to look at while we're talking to each other. It turns out binocular diplopia is a thing, and the fix for it is to cut your eye muscles up and stitch them back on in a better alignment. So this was actually me, but growing up, my mom would always tell me to grab donuts from the Walmart bakery area and eat it while we walked around the store. We lived in the country, so we went to the store every 2 weeks. For a long time, this proceeded until it was common practice, and eventually I just did it without even telling her. Around early middle school, a girl who has a crush on me sees me eating a donut in Walmart and asks me if I just take those. I respond, "Of course." She proceeds to take one and eat it with me to prove she's as cool as me, but I just don't understand. I then relayed to my mom how this silly girl had no idea Walmart had free donuts, and that's when she told me she had been paying for them for years. But I had not asked her permission for a long time, so there's no telling how many donuts I unknowingly stole from Walmart. It's not very often you get to find something strange out about yourself that you thought was perfectly normal. Not kidding, my boyfriend of almost 8 years thought lions were boys and tigers were girl lions, kind of like bulls and cows. My husband had no idea he was lactose intolerant. He thought everyone had diarrhea every day. He's 26 and found out last year. How'd he find out? His mom told him. She's known his whole life. A friend of mine whose parents immigrated here from Germany would throw away his used toilet paper rather than flush it. His parents taught him to do that because they did that. After almost throwing up when I went to use his bathroom, I asked him why he didn't flush it, and he had no idea what I was talking about. A lot of the world is like that. Which popular movie do you secretly hate, but are afraid to admit it, fearing backlash from fans? I don't care for anything Marvel or DC, but couldn't escape them for over a decade. I'm so tired. My wife hates Monty Python and the Holy Grail, wondering if I should consider divorce. Have you tried explaining every joke to her in great detail? I hear that helps. Or farting in her general direction. The crap show that started with Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I used to be a huge fan of Harry Potter. Those movies aren't that great either, and Rowling completely lost my respect with this obvious cash grab that demolished the original universe. It just makes me angry. Apparently people like it though, no clue why. Still haven't seen The Crimes of Grindelwald yet, but I consider this movie series the equivalent of the Lord of the Rings follow-ups, The Hobbit. We're all invested in this world. It's got a great cinematic history, not to mention the source material, but now we're viewing the B-reel. The Hobbit wasn't supposed to be directed by Peter Jackson, but he had to step in at the last minute. That couldn't have helped the creative process. I absolutely abhor The Greatest Showman. I think it's obnoxious, heavy-handed, and an unoriginal tool used to pander to modern audiences that crave a feeling of unique and special individuality. I remember telling my friends how much I hated it after I saw it, and my friend's husband got really upset with me and then proceeded to write a Facebook post about how I was simply out of touch because I didn't like the movie. Wild. So I stopped expressing my opinion of that movie. I 100% agree. It felt like one of the most hollow, manufactured, and soulless Hollywood musicals I've ever seen. And I generally enjoy Hollywood renditions of musicals, like Rent, Sweeney Todd, etc. The Greatest Showman had somewhat catchy tunes, but the music was auto-tuned to hell and back in a horrific way. The CG scenes taking place in 1910s New York City just looked like crap. The story made no sense. The only plus I could think of is the choreography, but it still wasn't anything special. My entire office praises the hell out of it and gets really defensive about anyone criticizing it, so I keep my mouth shut. Definitely. The actual soundtrack is great, but the film sounded so monotone, and kinda craps all over a woman who dedicated her life to charity and hated P.T. Barnum for very good reasons. The Hunger Games is probably my favorite book series, but the first 3 movies suck. I didn't watch the last one. The books became worse as they go, and same with the movies. The 3rd book was complete garbage. Jurassic World. I don't get how it became so popular. I secretly want the dinosaurs to win and eat all of the main characters. I'm actually certain a majority of people who see the movies want the dinos to win. I know I do, and that's enough evidence to support my claim. 100% go every time saying, this is it, this is the time that they let the dinosaurs eat everyone. Hate E.T., weird-ass alien creep. Used to have a nightmare about E.T. after seeing the movie as a child. He would be waiting out in the woods behind my house, and his finger would just be glowing. Like he was waiting for me to go out there and have him transmit me to another dimension or something. Ugh, what a creep. Man, I thought I was the only one. I had many nightmares about E.T. as a kid. Gruesome ones. Even to this day, I still remember them. It's horrifying. Black Panther. It's an okay superhero movie. Can't believe people think it should have won Best Picture. Dude, try being a black person and saying that. I told some of my black family members that I thought it was a fine movie but wasn't like an Oscar contender. You could have thought I said slavery didn't happen or something. Thing is, I saw it twice, and let me say the problems with that movie are even more evident the second time. That said, I still found it to be very entertaining and a very important movie. I just don't think that it makes it great. Frozen and Frozen 2. Do you have an open fear of backlash from Frozen fans? They never let things go. Backdoor Sluts 9. They threw away all of the character development we saw in 8, and for what? A couple of fresh young backdoor sluts? The plumber in 9 could barely speak English, much less deliver a line convincingly. I'll be surprised if we ever see him on screen again. Now compare that to the inspired performance of the pool guy in Scene 3 of Episode 8. I can't believe 9 didn't kill the series, but I've heard that they're bringing back 8's director for Episode 16, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed that they will return the series to its artistic roots. Funny thing is, that this is actually valid commentary on the series. Ted. Agreed. It's a Family Guy episode stretched throughout a movie. I thought that was the joke. Avatar. I really don't understand everyone's love of it. I fully do not get why there will be a sequel. I just found it painful to watch. If you're talking about the Blue Alien one, I'm not sure any fans existed after it left theaters to give you a hard time. It also really just wasn't popular beyond being a really good tech demo and a 50-year-old dad fantasy. Exactly this. It was an incredible tech demo, but nothing more. I came out of the theater amazed, but if you asked me about the plot, I'd have no idea. I think there was a tree? Ready Player One. As someone very close to nerd culture, I saw it as cheap mass-market pandering with the same gormless nerd boy gets magic dream girl plot that demeans us all. It was just garbage. I read the book, and I can tell you that I was hoping that it would get better at the end or something. The biggest plot twist of the whole thing was me trying to figure out what your spoiler bar said because it was too long to say, it doesn't. I really don't like Woody Allen. I find him pretty annoying. He's like the Bachelor in every Woody Allen movie. They're like, this guy's a great catch! And then you see him, and it's just a blob of corduroy. John Mulaney. Came to see if anyone said The Lord of the Rings. I'm very pleased to see it not be mentioned, but The Hobbit? Screw that. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I read The Hobbit twice and was so thrilled for the movies to come out. The first is the only movie to this day I've seen on opening night. I was so disappointed. It was way too animated and catered too much to younger kids in my opinion. Didn't even bother with the second one. They just don't feel like they're part of the Lord of the Rings universe that PJ perfected with the original trilogy of films. Mr. Bean. Like, I get it, but don't want to watch more than 30 seconds. I find it irritating purely because worldwide that's what Rowan Atkinson is known for, instead of the incredibly clever Blackadder, of which he is the titular character. Because Mr. Bean doesn't rely on witty dialogue or uniquely British humor or cultural references, so the humor translates worldwide. The Notebook. I don't get what's so romantic about a guy hanging on a Ferris wheel to make you go on a date with him. That's basically blackmailing. It's a movie about someone not being able to make up their mind. She can choose the kind and thoughtful war hero with money who loves her, or the kind and thoughtful war hero without a lot of money who loves her. They were both great dudes. Pick one. You're not a martyr, lady. It drives me crazy that people think this is the best love story ever. And the whole it's totally romantic to argue constantly. Screw that. Bird Box. It really seems like someone thought up the cool premise and then they tried to force a script into it. Although I gotta say, the scene with the parking sensors in the car was super cool. It's not a new premise. It's basically a better version of The Happening. All of Will Ferrell's movies. Will Ferrell has a brand of absurdist humor that either appeals to you or you outright despise it. I hate Avatar with a passion. Unobtainium? Seriously? That's my favorite part. Anytime I can fit unobtainium in a sentence, I go for it. I really didn't enjoy La La Land as much as everyone liked. It was so all over the place and the last few minutes were the best part. Decent music, didn't like the story. I feel like people who like musicals often dislike La La Land. I have never seen a musical before and went into La La Land with zero expectations and really liked it. I especially thought that the last scene was an excellent twist. The movie starts and ends really well, but I think the middle where they fly around and live together is pretty boring. Gravity. I hated that movie. I work for an aerospace firm that makes stuff for the ISS. That movie felt like a reason to get Sandra Bullock in her skimpies. Space isn't sexy. Space is full of a rat's nest of cables and 30-year-old equipment that miraculously is being kept on life support by an extremely dedicated group of engineers. That, and what the heck was that satellite debris doing in the same orbit as the ISS? Nearly the entire script was, Sandra Bullock hyperventilates for 2 hours. I never understood the appeal. I'm not afraid to clearly state my opinion of anything. I don't like any of the current crops of action movies. Is the action bad, or is the plot just extra stupid? In my case, I miss the unapologetic action and violence. I'm not in for the gore fest, but I must admit I found Dread, the one with Carl Urban, kind of violence refreshing. The clean violence you see now in movies irritates me to no end. Except maybe in superhero movies, because let's be honest, most of those fights would end with ripped off arms and whatnot. La La Land. It was just a love letter to musicals of the past. Well done, but not groundbreaking or particularly memorable in and of itself. All of my friends who had never really seen musicals went crazy for it, and I couldn't stand hearing the songs from it played. I love La La Land for its cinematography. So many of the shots are beautifully arranged color-wise, and the songs are good too, if not incredibly memorable. As a pianist, I loved watching Ryan Gosling's scenes with him playing, whether that's actually him or not. My complaint comes from the fact that the movie felt like it should have taken place in the 70s or 80s, and the modern-day setting feels out of place and shoehorned. Also, the leads are a strange choice, but they pull it off. Definitely not groundbreaking or particularly memorable, but very entertaining nonetheless. Also, I hate Seb. He's an idiot and everything he does and feels is wrong, but that's just me. Everything Tom Cruise. I just can't stand watching anything where he's in it. It just gives me this intense sense of discomfort. Like the uncanny valley. That's the reason I haven't watched Edge of Tomorrow, despite loving the book and manga. I hate him too, but Edge of Tomorrow and Minority Report are solid films. I give those a pass. So is Vanilla Sky, A Few Good Men, Tropic Thunder. Not quite hate, but Black Panther was not all that great. It was a fun movie with a decent plot and some good enough acting, which describes most of what Marvel has done. It had a better than average villain, but that does not make it groundbreaking. Wonder Woman's ending was incredibly bad. It ruined the movie. DC is a crap show, and for most of the movie, Wonder Woman was looking like a good change of pace, but that ending ruined the ideological depth in the movie. Inception is okay. I don't hate it, but it gets more praise than it deserves. Simply put, they could have done a lot more than make the dream world feel like a dream. Dreams are truly inconsistent, illogical, and fluid. The movie played with small bits of this, but ultimately left the dreams more or less the same as waking life. The original Star Wars trilogy are very fun movies. The universe created is cool, the themes are clear, and they stand up in time due to the number of practical effects. However, the praise they often get is overstated. They are pretty basic stories, they rehash a lot of old ideas, and they have more campiness than people admit. I love these movies, but they are overstated by many. I loved the Chris Pine monologue in Wonder Woman about how Ares isn't behind this and people are just bad. I thought that was brilliant, that war could not be ended by defeating one guy. And then she fights Ares, who looked ridiculous by the way, and all the fighting stops. They set up something so unique and then just shot it in the face. Exactly. They had an interesting story to tell, but botched it instead with ham-fisted CGI action. I have no issue saying this, but I think this thread is perfect. I hate Harry Potter. I did not expecto this Patronum. Ready Player One was horrendous and should have been offensive to anyone who's ever played a video game, something which Spielberg has clearly never done. I stopped watching after that scene where he just drove backwards on the racetrack to reveal the secret area. Like none of these millions of gamers playing every day would have ever tried something so crazy. I don't even consider myself a hardcore gamer, but that was just really dumb. That's a great example. 10 minutes into playing Mario Kart with 3 buddies and someone is driving backwards. But teams of people trying to find ways to beat it didn't try it once for 5 years. Mamma Mia. Can't stand that godforsaken movie. I've given it 2 chances and still no dice. I will never see the hype in it. Wine Mom fantasy movie. You leave my mom alone, she's an angel. I don't understand the appeal of Pulp Fiction. Am I missing something? As someone who saw it in its original theatrical run, I can say that the combination of low, pulpy subject matter, hitmen, graphic violence, drug dealers, etc., highly idiosyncratic dialogue, the Royale with cheese scene for example, and then novel concept of using non-linear storytelling outside of arthouse movies was unique. Lots of people were talking about the movie. Remember, no social media back then, and it just became one of those movies you had to see to be culturally current. Also, every party and bar I went to was playing the soundtrack CD. I still can't listen to Jungle Boogie or Girl You'll Be a Woman Soon because I heard them so much in the mid-90s. Jump to 20 to 25 years later, Tarantino's influence has been so pervasive and persistent that everybody is making non-linear puzzle-style genre films or TV series with copious dialogue and witty banter, reviving some of the old 70s and 80s actors' careers to boot. But back in 1994, it was something fresh, and Tarantino's voice sounded unique. I'm not a super fan, but I do find parts of it to be enjoyable, rewatchable, and the script is still full of great, endlessly quotable lines. 2001: A Space Odyssey. The book was 5 million times better than the movie. The parts of the book with Moonwatcher were actually compelling and fleshed out. The reason for Hal's turning on the humans in the book was much more interesting. The book is great and better at explaining what is going on, but the film truly is a work of art. I love how it was interpreted in 1968. If the film was made today, it would be a boring, exposition-laden CG fest. I doubt it would even get made. Every single Adam Sandler movie. Can't stand him. Talking in a creepy baby voice doesn't make you funny. That's hardly unpopular, I would say. I'm scared to say this. Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm a massive Queen fan and love Freddie Mercury, but had some issues with the movie. I thought Rami Malek did an amazing job, and I walked away from the movie feeling great and inspired, but I did have my qualms. It could have been better, but I felt like it got the story across and I got my ticket money's worth. Disney Star Wars or fan service pandering with more plot holes than a spaghetti strainer. Wow, truly a brave comment here. There's not a post about this on r/movies literally every week. Sausage Party. All critics liked it because it had meaning, but I thought it was an immature, obnoxious experience. Yes, I spent money to see it in theaters because a friend of mine and I were in the mood to see a movie, but the best part was when the douche yells, "That was a bad pun and you know it!" Otherwise, Like, seriously, sentient food, guys. Napoleon Dynamite. My god, what a dumb movie. What a polarizing movie. I think people either hate it with a passion or love it with a passion, depending on humor styles they like. Well, here it goes. The Godfather. Growing up, it seemed like it was everyone's favorite movie and hyped to the highest heavens. I think it's even number 1 on AFI's Top 100 list. When I would reply that I hadn't watched it yet, I would get retorts of, "OMG, why not? It's the best movie ever!" all the time, followed by looks of disappointment and disbelief. When I finally did see it, I thought it was a decent movie, but nothing really worth all that hype. I've said it many times before, regardless of the backlash. The Nolan Batman trilogy got worse with every subsequent installment. Batman Begins is an amazing film. The Dark Knight suffers many plot holes, oversaturation of characters, and a lackluster, messageless finale. No, the Joker didn't have a point. Dark Knight Rises is just plain bad all over. Unbelievable villains, no sense of time progression, glaring gaps in the narrative, and a closing scene that invalidates the whole damn movie. It went from excellent to disappointing to outright crap. The Transformers movies. After rewatching them, I realize how bad they are. With most fight scenes consisting of random explosions and sparks everywhere, they just look stupid. Recently, I watched Bumblebee and see how much better it is without Michael Bay. Neither of those opinions are unpopular, just saying. The Polar Express. I hated it from the first time I saw it and ended up having to sit through it every year around Christmas because kids are around and everyone loves it. The CA is in the uncanny valley, making all the characters creepy, and the whole "you have to believe" nonsense is completely without meaning. Believe in what? Santa? Why? No reason. Just a stupid film. Hate it. Started to watch Roma because of all the Oscar buzz about it. I certainly empathized with the main characters, and I agreed with what appeared to be the developing political and humanitarian message, but I only watched half of it because nothing about it said superior movie making or exceptional acting. It was just a pretty good movie that fragrantly stroked my liberal bias. I think Roma was primarily lauded for its cinematography and its representation of indigenous women, also not presenting a negative stereotype of Mexico, which is rare. Interstellar. That movie would have been good if it ended 40 minutes before it ended, but then you would have missed the whole bit about how black holes are powered by love or whatever. MCU Next Phase. Can't they just end it with the Avengers Endgame? Why the need to make more in a short span of time? Can't they just wait like 4 to 6 years after Endgame to start a new phase? Gosh. There's this thing called money, maybe you've heard of it. Pacific Rim. It's got abysmally bad writing and characters to me. The thing is, people are like, well, just turn off your brain and watch the robots fight giant monsters, and I would absolutely love to do it, but the movie is like 90% crappy dialogue and story. They had those awesome robots from other countries with interesting weaponry and styles, and they died instantly in the first battle. Don't even get me started on the sequel, which is pretty much universally disliked, but people still talk about the first one like it's this awesome giant mech movie, but the giant mechs are like 5% of the screen time, I feel like. The Shape of Water. I found it to be boring, predictable, and at times weird, just for the sake of being weird. I almost turned it off before it was over, but kept thinking, this won Best Picture, surely it will get better. Nope, I have no idea how it won so many awards. The Hangover. It was hyped so much by my social circle and the media. There was no way it could have lived up to expectations, and it fell so short of funny in almost every scene it's hard to fathom people actually laughing. It's just so blah. Speaking of which, Hangover 2 was a rehash of the first, so even the shock humor wasn't as funny the second time around. Hangover 3 was just garbage. Saw. I've never become angry from watching a movie before Saw. The acting was so terrible, the movie was so cheesy, and it was so far from scary it was laughable. As in, when I wasn't outwardly angry at the terrible writing and the performance of the actors, I was dying laughing of how horrendous the movie was. I've said things in the past about it, and people have argued like crazy with me. That's fine, to each their own, but now I just keep quiet about how terrible Saw is. I always thought it was supposed to be cheesy and bad. The Breakfast Club. Entirely for personal reasons, it reminded me of times in high school when I would have a good interaction with a fellow student in a different clique than me, expect to actually have formed a friendship with them, then they would continue to act like I didn't exist. I just didn't buy that these kids could actually change after a few hours together, since it hadn't happened to me in the past. Yeah, but wasn't that the idea though? My take on the ending was that they all kinda knew they would never speak to each other again. Fast and Furious. All of them. A Star is Born. It's not a bad movie, but it's been made 4 times. It's easy to get right. That movie was alright, not amazing. It did make me cry though, when, spoiler alert, Bradley Cooper's character cooks the steak for his dog before going to hang himself. That one scene made more of an impact on me than the whole rest of the movie. Late to the party here, but I hate Elf, with a passion, and my family is fully aware of it and not so subtly plays it every day leading up to Christmas for a few weeks. Will Ferrell in tights creeped me out. Will Ferrell as a grown man but having the mental capacity of a 7-year-old really creeped me out. Will Ferrell in the ladies' room was cringeworthy. I thought the premise was stupid, the story beyond corny, and I didn't find any part of it sweet. I did enjoy the snowball machine gun. I'm not heartless. Inception. It's like a fever dream of a graduate art student who's told his senior project is to make an action film. No, you just need to watch it more than once to understand it. It isn't Primer. This is a film that thinks so little of its audience that it has to define catharsis. When you're making a $200 million blockbuster meant to reach a wide audience, you're going to have to dumb it down for some people. I don't like the new Pixar movies. Finding Dory and Incredibles 2 were nowhere near as good as the first ones, and the standalone films like Coco aren't memorable like the old Pixar standalones were. I also didn't like Toy Story 3 very much. I love 1 and 2. I thought it was just way too serious and dark and didn't have enough humor to even everything out. I don't have high hopes for Toy Story 4. Could it be you've grown out of them? A little bit of a different answer, but I generally do not like modern movies that are in black and white. I get the idea, but it just takes me out of the movie. I end up focusing on why the director chose to film in black and white instead of just watching the movie. The one exception was Schindler's List, but Nebraska, Roma, The Artist, etc. were all too difficult for me to focus on the actual content of the movie over the aesthetics of the black and white film. I think the beauty of Schindler's List is that it's in black and white and it's a period piece, so it can never look dated. I don't hate it, but I think Captain America: The Winter Soldier is massively overrated. I mean, some people call it one of the best films ever, but I just found it to be boring and forgettable, like many MCU films. I also felt similar to The Dark Knight, but then again I haven't watched it in ages, so maybe I should reassess it. I personally enjoyed all Captain America movies. The first one was like an old 1940s propaganda film where Captain America was just pure good, and the Red Skull was just a purely bad guy. Pretty basic, but it set Captain America as a guy with unwavering moral principles. The Winter Soldier is where these idealistic notions of good or bad become broken down. I heard somewhere that the second Captain America movie was basically Steve Rogers becoming a witness to the de-idolization of America. All of a sudden, America is no longer taking the role of pure good, so Captain America had to stick to his morals to save the day. In Civil War, Captain America's morals are put to the test, and we can see where his true character is. Sure, he wants to protect his friends, but that comes at the cost of his perceived honesty, lying to Tony Stark about his parents, and leads him to fight other heroes. This change in Steve Rogers' costume in Infinity War exemplifies this shift. All black instead of the flag colors. He was no longer the red, white, and blue patriot of the past. The moral ambiguity of this new time and the breakdown of his own ideals make him a darker person. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you want to share with us, please leave it down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.